Boom. Welcome to the Sunday Show. This is awesome because normally the Sunday Show is me and Jimmy, and this week it's me and Shannon Q. How you doing, Shannon?
I'm good. I like how the opening is just basically an evolution of Jimmy's hair. The opening sequence.
I can buy that.
Just like Jimmy's hair through time. I love it.
There was a this is wild because so people put together like best of clips over what I've done on various shows over all the years, and when I it was funny because they put them together kind of and clipped them in order. And there was this video that was like, oh, Matt's best comments or whatever else. And I only ever tuned in to watch it because it started off with fat Matt with hair, fat Matt with less hair, fat Matt with no hair. And then gradually I got skinnier and the beard got longer. And then once my diabetes started getting treated, I started getting fatter again. And so I was like, oh, am I going to get hair back at the end of this cycle? And the answer is no. And then I had a heart attack and now I'm back down to around 200 again. So awesome stuff. This is, by the way, the Sunday Show. Some people would look at it as the flagship and best and most important and most super awesome show on the line. I don't think so. I think, I think there's lots of opportunities, but this is the primary show where we engage with people who espouse some sort of religious or supernatural belief. And so they will always be given priority. The number is 720-619-2288. It's at the bottom of your screen. There's also a web link down below in the description so that if you don't want to call from your phone, you can call from your PC. A couple quick notes, and I'm sure the call screeners will tell those of you who are calling in this stuff as well. Once you're on hold, as soon as we go live with you, turn off your television or your computer or wherever else you're listening to it so that we don't end up getting an echo. Try to make sure that you leave pauses and spaces because it's undeniable. There's a delay and we are all prone to interrupting, both for clarity and out of frustration. I hope that interruptions are going to be more about clarity than frustration, but you never know. In addition to all of that, we want to know what you think and why. But if we're having difficulty making a cogent or having a coherent discussion about this, then we may let you go. And what we'll do is advise you to maybe think some more about how to put together the ideas that you want to express and then call back in. Despite what some people think, I'm not looking for antagonistic, yelling, poo-flinging crap. But it's going to happen at some point, some days. As a reminder, Sunday is today. Sunday is Sunday Show Day. Makes sense. But on Monday, you have Skeptalk, which is going to be hosted by Erica Gutsick-Given. And on Tuesdays, Dying Out Loud with Dave Warnock and Footless Joe. Wednesday, I'll be back on the Hang Up with J Mike. Thursday's Transatlantic Call-In Show will be at 4 p.m. this week so that we can have Dr. Ben on with Arden. Next week on the Sunday Show, it'll be Jimmy and possibly me. There's a chance that I will be vending at a reptile convention. And if that's the case, then I will have to skip that Sunday show. But if we're not going to be vending, then I'll get back Saturday night. And we should know by Friday. Like if they haven't told me by Friday whether or not we have a table, then I'll be here for the Sunday show. And our call screener today is Dragon. And we've got, Cookies and Dylan and a bunch of others who are moderators in chat. And that's just hot buttered awesome. Get your calls in and get them in early. I don't think we're going to try to run long. I don't know if we have a crazy deadline, but one of the things that's been happening is the first hour of the show, we'll get a couple of calls and they'll be like, oh, I want an advice call or I want to talk about, this thing. And then in the last 30, 40 minutes of the show, all of a sudden there'll be 15 theists that call in with, I've got proof of God and I can demonstrate, God's moral perfection and I can demonstrate God as the creator. Awesome. Maybe that'll force us to shift the show's time or just run long. But the earlier you get the calls in, the more likely we are to take them. There's one other announcement, and that's something for today, this evening. and that is a special event for patrons featuring tonight at 6 p.m. Central. Oh,
it
was up
muted
for a
you
second.
when the thing went up. So I was like, oh, fuck, and unhit it. And now it's awkward. But you know what? It's all right. We're just going to put it up for a second again. There you go, everybody. Happy Christmas.
Hear me,
Look at
they
that
can hear
guy.
you.
Exploiting
Yeah.
Forrest's face for money.
So did it mute me again when it goes up?
Yes, it
I'm not
did.
sure.
Well, okay. Is there anything? Put the thing up, and you give the announcement for it. Then,
all right.
Producer person.
Okay. So everybody, tonight at 6 p.m. Central Time on Zoom, we will have a live Q&A with Forrest Valkai, like we do once a month with a bunch of our different hosts throughout the Line Network. All you got to do is go subscribe at patreon.com/calltheline, and you will get access to that special Zoom event. So head there now if you want to be part of that tonight at 6 p.m. Central Time.
All right. As a reminder,
Thanks,
please ask Forrest all kinds of difficult questions. I think tomorrow he's working on his dissertation. So the more you can throw at him today, the worse he'll probably do tomorrow.
Sabotage
the
Forrest.
less likely it is that he'll go off and we may be able to keep him here in our tiny little envelope of hosts rather than having him run off to become the next Neil deGrasse Tyson or whatever.
Stifle Forrest. Rob the world of Forrest.
Stay, Forrest, stay. We've got callers, and we don't have theist callers yet, so we're going to go ahead and take the atheist callers that we've got, which, by the way, I know that we say we're always going to prioritize theist callers. That's because that's what the show's about. And sometimes when we get atheist callers in, maybe it's advice they're seeking. Maybe they want to tell their story. All those things are great and wonderful. The atheists that are calling and just talk about how much they love the shows or whatever else, that really doesn't make the show good. I appreciate it. And I love the fact that you guys are all here and I see people interacting in chat, and I'm sure there will be disagreements and everything else, but we've got a couple calls ready to go. So Shannon, if you're ready, I'm gonna jump
ready.
right in.
Let's do it.
Sweet. All right. Shaz in Virginia, pronouns are he, him, as an anti-theist with a political question for us. And that always goes well. Hey, Shaz, you're on the air.
Good evening. Afternoon, actually. Matt and Shannon, both of you, the question is similar. I understand Shannon's in Canada, so that's related to Canada, and Matt in the US. Do you think in our lifetimes we will ever get to a point where a political candidate would not have to stand up there and profess faith? And Shannon, is it just as faithful up in Canada, or do you have, humanists who run for office?
In Canada, it depends on where you are. I think out west, it's a bit more religious than here. We're pretty secular here where I am on the East Coast. So when somebody's running for political office here, you very rarely, it's considered distasteful almost to really hammer on your particular religion. People will, of course, talk about their faith, like, I guess kind of innocuously, but it's not like really a linchpin for anybody when it comes to voting. I mean, maybe some people, I can't speak for, people ubiquitously, but it's not as leaned upon or seen as necessary, I think, than it is in the States. Here in my little alcove of Canada. Canada's quite a big place, and out west, and for the current Conservative Party of Canada, they're leaning really heavy right now. Pierre Poilievre is leaning super heavy right now into, faith and kind of like Donald Trump's whole entire playbook of saying that you can't trust the media and wanting to defund the CBC and supporting anti-vaxxers and like all of that stuff. So, I mean, it's kind of bleeding in here. We'll see how that pans out in the next federal election, which is coming up next year, but next year and a half, I think. But it's not as doom and gloom as I think it is down in the States.
Yeah, and Shaz,
Thanks for that.
from the standpoint of the U.S., so first of all, the answer to your question is yes. Not only do I think it will happen, I think it's inevitable, and it has already happened. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but Jared Huffman, who's a congressman from California's 2nd District, along with a couple others, created the Congressional Free Thought Caucus. It was Jared Huffman, Jamie Raskin, Jerry McNerney. And it now has, I'm going to guess, let's see, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. So it's got like 18 or 19 representatives, which is a small portion. And they're not all secular, but just by being members of the Free Thought Caucus, because the membership to the Free Thought Caucus is open to anybody, regardless, any member of Congress, regardless of religion or political party. But the people who are willing to jump in and say, yes, I will be a part of the Free Thought Caucus, seem to at least be at the end of old shows of atheist experience, we'd invite people to dinner and say, any atheist or atheist friendly person is welcome to join us. I think these are all people who are friendly towards secularism. Whether or not they're all secular, whether or not they're all atheists, I have no idea. And I'm not going to chase it down because, quite frankly, I know atheists that you couldn't pay me enough money to vote for, and I know some theists that you probably couldn't pay me to not vote for unless you found a carbon copy of them that also happened to be an atheist. It is part of it. What people's personal beliefs are certainly a part of it, and it contributes. But I know plenty of theists who are just wonderful people and in support of some of the best policies. And I know some atheists who are absolutely not that. And so we already have the ability. It's not as easy as it should be, but we already have the ability for some people to run for office. If you're talking about something like president, I would say that would happen in my lifetime, but quite frankly, I don't know how long my lifetime is going to be. And as somebody who's already had a triple bypass surgery, I mean, I might be here for another 40 years or 40 minutes, but I'm going to live as if what I do matters and continue to encourage people who are secular and secular supportive to run for office.
Well, I do think that what you do matters. And yeah, I was not aware that there's this caucus in Congress. I was not aware of that. But yeah, and I totally am with you when you say that, there are some humanists, secular people who are crap and some theists who, well, I would think that if you are a theist, the moment you say that, I believe in something without having any proof whatsoever, any inclination whatsoever of that thing being there, it kind of hampers your, at least I think that it hampers your ability to, think rationally, solve problems rationally. And that's why it kind of pisses me off. But I'm with you. I have friends who are believers. I myself was born a Hindu, so I have Hindu friends, I have Christian friends, I have Muslim friends as well. So I do believe that, the Muslims are kind of more theistic and more set in their ways than the others. But yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, Dawkins would interrupt right here, and rightly so, to say that you weren't born a Hindu child. You were a child born to a Hindu family.
I stand corrected. Born to Hindu parents.
No, it's yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And by the way, I don't need to know exactly where you live, but it already lists you as Virginia. And you might be interested in knowing that Don Beyer, who is a congressman in his 5th term in the U.S. House of Representatives from Virginia's 8th District, representing Arlington, Alexandria, Falls Church, and parts of Fairfax, is on the Congressional Free Thought Caucus. He was lieutenant governor of
caucus. I will. I'll look it up.
Virginia. He was a lieutenant governor of Virginia for 8 years. Obama appointed him as ambassador to Switzerland and Liechtenstein in 2009. Yep, he's there as a member of the Congressional Free Thought Caucus.
Good to know. I will look these guys up.
Thanks, Jez.
Thank you. Good day.
Yeah, on the list of atheists that I wouldn't vote for, that list was longer until just yesterday or the day before, when Ayan Hirsi Ali announced that she's no longer an atheist. She's now a Christian. And that came as no surprise to me. I've already posted about it. I'm not going to go into it in great depth here. She hasn't been relevant in the atheist community, at least certainly not in the left progressive leaning wing of the atheist community. She's been involved with right-wing think tanks and is anti-trans, and she is now, basically she wrote her article on why she's now a Christian, and she provided no argument or evidence for the truth of Christianity, no mention of Jesus or the Bible or salvation at all. It was entirely, here's how and why I left Islam, how and why I fell into atheism, or why she thinks she chose atheism as if belief is a choice. So already and that atheism is dogmatic or has some dogma. Atheism didn't help squash her nihilistic thoughts. And as a strategic point, she doesn't think that atheism can fix the world the way Christianity can. So everything about her conversion makes it sound like she's just joined another club, that it has nothing to do with whether or not it's true. It has nothing to do with any conviction on the part of it, nothing to do with any of the doctrines of Christianity. It is entirely about the utility of joining one of the world's most popular beliefs. And that's it. And it shows what kind of thinker Ayan has been, which go listen to her 2015 keynote address to American atheists that I nearly walked out of, but at least stayed to listen, and then went down and I talked to Beth afterwards, and I was like, yeah, she got issues. But I'm not here to poop on her. Whether she's sincere in her conversion, or whether this is her club de jour or part of a way to sell more books, who knows? Not my business. What I can say with confidence is there's absolutely nothing in her why I'm now a Christian talk that has anything to do with the truth of Christianity or her becoming convinced of it. Everything was all about combating woke ideology and combating Islamism. And evidently atheism just wasn't doing enough to help her combat Islamism or woke ideology. And so she's moved on to an ideology that will make her feel more comfortable with her right-wing leanings.
That pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, it was, I posted that I wasn't surprised, and there were people who were like, why weren't you surprised? And I'm like, did you miss the fact that she's done videos with PragerU, that she's been in a right-wing think tank, that she's done absolutely nothing with or for the broader atheist secular community for years? I mean, I won't say that necessarily stopped in 2015, but right after that keynote address, it was, okay, I don't see this person as a part of our community. It's great that they're secular. But when your view of religion is, let me put on the one that's most useful at the time, you're coming at it from a completely different standpoint from what I am. And I saw a note from Paul earlier today on a thing that I comment on it as well, where there were people that were just mocking atheists who can't understand why studies are showing that religion is beneficial. And I'm like, I wasn't remotely surprised or baffled by that. Of course, things that the most people like are going to be beneficial. The broadest community, the most expansive community on the planet, is going to be a benefit to you. It's going to be a benefit to be in the in club instead of, smoking out by the dumpster, on your own with the people who aren't cool.
Very true. Like sociologically, if you're part of the largest, most powerful in group, as opposed to being on the outside, there's direct benefits from that. 100%.
It's, it wasn't surprising, and I'm not disappointed, because I don't have any ties to Ayan and what she thinks.
I was just mind-numbingly indifferent to it when it came out. Like it was neither groundbreaking to me. Like it almost seemed like, yeah, okay, well that makes sense for her, really, based on her branding and Like, it makes sense for her. It's disappointing that somebody who talks so much about rationality and uses at least ostensibly the artifice of it for the justifications for her position couldn't, when she's making this huge paradigm shift regarding her beliefs, provide one single justification to demonstrate the truth of what she's shifting to. She was mostly talking about its utility to her, and then briefly was like something meaning.
Yeah, and
That,
at
like,
the end,
which seems like a cop out to me, but I mean, that's her personal journey. So,
yep, and
cynically, it seems to me that she thinks that they're better allies in her fight than atheists have been, because atheists saw her more so as somebody who was bigoted on measure, and somebody that they were no longer going to be rallying behind, because the community itself is shifting a significantly more, progressive, because that's, where logic would lead you, if and humanism would lead you, and those don't align with her goals. So, who doesn't align with logic and progressivism and is easy to become a part of their camp. Bam. There you go.
yeah, don't get me wrong. Ayan Hirsi Ali was critical and to women's issues, and particularly standing in opposition to female genital mutilation and how
Sure.
Islam treats women just in general. I'm not taking any of that away from her. Her books and some of her talks changed people's lives and changed them for the better. That's not what the issue is. The issue is that she left Islam, jumped into atheism, and like a few other people, were thrust into the spotlight, the forefront, as the new atheist darling. Matter of fact, around the Reason rally in 2012 is when some of this started happening, because in addition to Ayan Hirsi Ali, who'd been around for years, but a few years before that, but in 2012, Theresa McBain shows up at the Reason rally as someone finding their way out of religion through the Clergy Project. And they put her up on the big stage to say, here's somebody who, didn't plan it, we didn't know, but today they're just going to say, you know what, I'm a former minister who's now an atheist, and yay. And that was 2012. And by 2016, Theresa had gone back to her religious beliefs because she missed the music, because she wasn't, she also lied on a resume and came under claiming she had a master's in divinity or something. And that got exposed. And she had to apologize for that. And so maybe her darling run, I can't get into somebody's head. I can't tell you what they do believe, what they don't believe, and why. I can tell you what they said. And when I read Teresa's reasons for going back to her religion, because the first thing that entered my head was, hey, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you, because if you found that this is true, I want to know. I want everybody to know. She wasn't interested in that conversation, because she didn't find any new information that was true. This was an entirely emotional decision about her missing a particular community and missing the music and this other stuff. And that's fine. And for the people like Teresa and Ayan and others who view religion as a sort of social club where it's a choice and a decision, not like, I understand, I was a Southern Baptist. We picked which church we went to, but we didn't pick Christianity. That's just what we were convinced was true. Was the really real. And for the people who would look at it more as a club, I don't want to say I don't understand that. I can understand the appeal of the clubs and the benefits of the clubs. It couldn't ever be that for me. It had to be about what was true. And if you find the utility of an idea, the utility idea and the truth of it may in fact be separate. And if it turns out that you find an idea particularly utilitarian and useful and beneficial, and then you find out there's no good reason to think it's true, seems to me that the best thing you could do is figure out why you're getting beneficial results from it. Because just in the same way you'd study a placebo, hey, I've got this magic feather that lets me fly. Oh, I can fly without it. Well, maybe it wasn't the feather. Maybe I need to do more research. But We got callers ready if you want some more.
I suppose.
Sweet. Since that's what we're here for. Jay in Ohio, pronouns are he, him, is an atheist that has a question about why don't people recognize this stuff. But Jay, go ahead. Ask your question. Thanks for waiting.
Hello. My name
Hi.
is Jay, and so my question is mainly about, like, you know how you guys know how there's like, well, I mean, you all know how there's multiple religions that exist, right? Like how there's so many of them and throughout the
Sure.
years and just in general, even now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Sure.
just wondering, like, I don't really understand, like, how, like, because, like, I used to be a Christian. I'm not sure what version, but but like, you know, I did a lot of research, a lot of studying, and then I was like, you know, it's like, okay, this probably isn't really true. And when I started seeing like how there's so many different religions, like, you know, you got Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Taoism, Buddhism, Hinduism, all these different types, I just thought, well, if all these exist, it's like, how can I just keep going with mine? And it was just like, so I kind of just like left. I mean, it wasn't instant, but it was just like a
Multiple religions could exist, and one of them could be true, though. Like that wouldn't be the best criteria for excluding them all. Is the fact that there's multiple alternatives. Therefore, like logically, you can't say there's multiple choices, therefore that are similar. Therefore, all must be false. Is functionally what you're saying, and that's not entirely. That's not even not entirely.
yeah,
That's not the best way to approach things. I understand what you're saying, though. Like from the perspective.
Yeah,
yeah.
it seems
But I
like
mean, like
when you're talking about.
from a reality. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean from like a reality perspective though. Like for example, I kind of used this with my friends one time. I was like, you know, if you walk into like a restaurant, let's just say it's any restaurant, it doesn't matter, and you know, inside the restaurant, you know, you see the menu and the color of the menu, like factually, it's like green or whatever, right? And then so then like one person says no, it's blue, and another person says no, it's red, and another person says no, it's pink, and then another person says no, it's green. Like, who's right?
Well, factually, it's
Kind of thing.
green. Like if you're saying definite, like if you're saying factually as part of the premise, it's green. The person who says it's green would be right. So
Yes.
are you talking about? Like, I'm trying to wrap my head around like what you're attempting to communicate. Are you basically saying that because there are multiple alternatives, it's no one can know the truth? Or are you?
No, it's more like
Or is
it's
green
more
like
like,
the atheism, and you're saying the religions are people saying red, blue, turquoise, orange?
well, I mean, to me, it kind of feels like that. It kind of feels like them saying that, like, you know, multiple of them saying like, okay, look, like you have, well, I shouldn't say like that, but sorry. You have ones that'll say like, okay, look, your store's real, and then you have ones that say, no, Yahweh's real, no, Muhammad's real, no, like Vishnu's real, and then they'll say the other
Mm-hmm.
ones aren't real. Well, so I'm thinking like, you know, you can't really, I don't know, just like
No, they can't all be right.
I don't see how you can really,
They can't all be right.
yeah, like it's
But
like
that
some
doesn't
that
mean that
like
any
some,
of
I mean,
them
not all
individually
Hindus.
are wrong.
Hmm?
But that doesn't mean just the fact that they can't all be right doesn't mean that any individual one is wrong, just based on that fact alone.
I mean, that's true. I don't know. I just been thinking about it like that a lot, and the fact that there's like so many different denominations of each one. Like Christianity has like Baptist and Protestant and Catholic, and it's like, I don't know. And then Islam has Shia, and then I think the other one
Sunni,
Sunni. I think
yeah.
like it's just like there's so
Maybe a
many of
better
them.
way
It's
to
just
look at
like,
it would, well, like sociologically, might be a better way to look at it, because that is actually sociological evidence that they're kind of man-made when you see them spring forth based around cultural mores and you see them deviate, and you see them evolve even within their own, like, seemingly self-contained system, like Muslims and Jews and Taoists and definitely Christians into multiple denominations. You can see the fingerprints of people changing the dynamics of the understanding of the belief system and then forming communities around that. So you can see the belief systems themselves changing. So that I can see sociologically as evidence that they're man-made. So that might
Yeah.
be one way of looking at it.
You mentioned, Jay, that
Logically,
you
it's
were
not sound.
you mentioned, Jay, that you were a Christian, but you weren't really sure, which variety, and that's fine. I'm assuming that it was when you were younger, and you find your way out of it. In addition to kind of what Shannon's saying, yes, I think that there's a case to be made that when I look around and see all the other religions, like I remember in my freshman year of high school, I took a course. I took two courses, one on mythology and one on comparative religions, and they were from the same teacher, and it was 2-semester courses. What I recall is that taking a comparative religions course, I learned about all these other religions, and they all seemed really, really weird to me. Some of them less weird, the ones that were, of a variety of Judaism or Islam or something, came from an Abrahamic tradition, felt less strange to me than, Hinduism or whatever. But I can remember sitting there and thinking, and this is a paraphrase, I don't remember the exact words, but thinking and feeling, wow, all these other people have fallen for false religions. How fortunate am I that I was raised with a true understanding of the true God. And that was it was because at the time I was convinced that we had good, strong evidence for this. And I had been in church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Monday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, mission trips, all this other stuff. I'd, been up on the main stage, singing with the choir, instructing people, doing all this stuff, teaching Sunday school, everything. And because of that, when you're so in it, not only do other things feel weird, but it's absurd to think that you could be wrong. And when the explanation for why are there other religions is because Satan is the enemy, and Satan has run around deceiving the world, and some people have fallen for his deceptions. But as the Bible says, let God be true and every man a liar. And that, you go through verses, you'd find all the little things that would, comfort all of that and make it seem like, oh, yeah. But I remember feeling, wow, how weird is it that all these people believe all these other things, and I've got the one true religion? And it was years, like a decade and some change, before I reflected back on that exact thought and realized not that my prior religion was just as ridiculous as every other one. I don't think they're all equivalent on ridiculousness. I think Scientology is really near the peak of ridiculousness. Mormonism's just a little bit below that. Then you move down, but they're all still on the ridiculous side of the spectrum. It's like saying, I'd rather get athlete's foot. I'd rather get athlete's foot than jock itch, and I'd rather get that than cancer. But I'd rather not get any of them. They're all bad.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so I think one of the reasons that people don't always recognize it is because religions have built-in protective mechanisms. Mine had protective mechanisms on how I view the rest of them. Some of them have softer protective mechanisms. Like I have friends who were brought up in more like Hindu traditions and Buddhist traditions and others that view all these religions as they've all got it wrong, but they're honestly trying to assess the one thing that is real. And when you do that, it now explains why there's so many, why they can't see their own errors, why they all think they've got it right. Because somewhere there's an actual God that they're all struggling to get to know. And that's what life is about getting over the trappings of this material existence so that you can understand God. And that is a very appealing message for a lot of people.
I see. So that's why they so it's like they're so far into their own to the point where like it's almost like they can't even see the others, kind of thing.
That may be. I mean, I'm just spitballing ideas. There's probably as many different reasons as there are people.
Yeah, it's just I just never really understood. Like, I mean, I was never really I was able to wrap my head around this thing, and like it kind of like it helped me leave, but I guess it might not work for everyone. Because especially like when I was watching Dark Matter, because he made a video about it was animated because I like animated stuff, and he just showed like just multiple characters just arguing about like about like they said they all believed in God, and then each character started breaking down their beliefs about God, and then that's when they started fighting each other, like started arguing with each other.
Depending on which Dark Matter video it was, that might have been my voice. I've been in a few of them. I've voiced some of his videos. He's a good guy. He's a really good guy. I've been one of his voice actors before. But I understand that that's like compelling. Like usually if Dark Matter is doing a video like that, he's attempting to prove a point about how usually the different sects within like the same types of religion, so probably Abrahamic religions, likely I'm guessing would have been the ones that he'd choose, contradict each other even though they're using the same source material, which is a valid point. Like,
I mean, you don't have to go far. You've got Catholics, Protestants, over 1,000 different denominations just within Christianity, and then you have to add in the varieties of Judaism that are all pointing to at least parts of that same book. And so we're still in this position where liberal and moderate Christians are still pointing to the exact same book, the exact same dogma and tenets that exist for the fundamentalists. They've just found a way to make it fit better with the way they want the world to be. And to me, it's undeniable that the non-denominational church down the street, or even like the Austin Baptist Church, whichever Baptist church it is down here, they've got a big sign up that's like, Black Lives Matter and science is real and love is love and everybody's welcome here, and it's all in the rainbow thing. And the former Southern Baptist in me is like, how the fuck is that a Baptist church putting that on? That does not compute. And yet, no matter whether they have good reason for it or not, which they don't, not from their doctrinal standpoint, they have good reason from a human standpoint. I'm still happy that they are better people than the individuals that ran the churches I went to.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think that's good that they do that. I really do like. I mean, I always tell other people this, that the liberal version of any religion, whether it's Christianity, Hinduism, Judaism, any of them, is always usually the best version because they're the most accepting, they're most open, they're the most non-discriminatory. But it's just, I feel like it's just very disappointing and sad that those ones are the farthest away from their own religion. I mean, it feels like they might as well just drop it entirely, but I feel like the only reason they don't drop it, and I hate to say this, but I feel like it's because of the D word, which is, when you are not living anymore. I mean, I have thanatophobia, so yeah, death, basically.
Oh, I couldn't tell what letter you were.
I thought he said V.
I thought you said V as well, but also I couldn't imagine why somebody would refer to death as the D word.
Because that's thanatophobia for you. It's that bad. Thanatophobia. Oh, it's the fear of that. Yeah.
But anyway, Jay, hope that helps out.
Yeah.
If you get any other questions, feel free to call and let us know. But also don't forget about recoveringfromreligion.org and a number of other national organizations that can be useful for people with questions and also to find community. So thanks a lot for calling, Jay.
All right. Thanks. Yeah.
Cheers.
You know what that made me think of, and this is completely aside but also related, is the interdenomination differences that you don't even realize about. Like Paul and I were from very, very different religions, even though we were both Christians. For example, like we had like a knockdown, drag out argument as atheists one day over how to appropriately take communion. like literally, like getting Bibles, arguing with each other about, I was like, what do you mean you just sit in a chair and somebody gives you a bread cube and you eat it? No, get up, show your respect to God, go down the aisle, you lean down, you put your hand out, like and it needs to be given to you directly by somebody who has blessed it. Are you kidding me? You just pass it around like an hors d'oeuvre. I was wild. Both of us, like, it's so funny how just the differences between the faiths that we don't even recognize are like paramount. Like
You're a
paramount. Like
Pharisee.
I couldn't wrap my head around the idea that you would just sit there and somebody would give you a cracker sitting down and you would just eat the cracker and sit there. Like, you need to get up and get in line, go up. You need to bow to the statue, which now I recognize is like totally not what you should do reading the book. Anyway,
I'm
but
wondering.
it's funny.
I'm wondering if during the argument, if Paul got upset and called you a Pharisee, because you're talking about the kind of legalistic, ritualistic aspect of the thing. As a Southern Baptist, we stayed in the pew, although my church didn't have the kneeling things with the pews. Like some churches would have a little thing on the pew in front of you that would drop
totally
down,
did. Folded
so that you
down.
could kneel.
Yep.
Yes, so that you could kneel on something comfortable. And
underneath where the books were
that.
for the hymnals and the prayer books. Yeah. Yeah.
Our church didn't have those, because if you were going to hit your knees, why on earth would you need to be comfortable? You're there to be there to be subservient to God. But we would sit there, and the ushers would take a big round. It was the same thing as kind of the offering plates, only with an insert in it, with a whole bunch of little things of grape juice, because there was not wine, grape juice, and they'd pass that down the aisle. You had brandy for communion? What kind of fucking church was this?
It was some sort of kind of brandy, I think, that went into it. I don't know. I don't think brandy is a kind of wine, but like, so, and I was like very, very staunch on this because I was an altar girl, right? So I had to like go through the blessings and the presentations and the folding of the specific napkins and how to drape things and how to clean the cup and how to serve. And I got confirmed at a really young age. I was like 8 or 9 or something when I got confirmed. And it's like very important, like how you go up and how you even lay your hands to get it is exceptionally important. Like all of those little tiny aspects are all important. And you needed this gold chalice, and you would have to wipe it off, and it would need to be blessed, and you needed to come in on the left and not the right. And then when they switched, like all of that stuff, all of that pomp and circumstance was exceptionally important to my faith. And for Paul, I was just like, what do you mean they just hand around a tray of hors d'oeuvres and you just sit there and eat them? That's wild to me. It was wild because it was such an ordeal, such an important, like, sacred ceremony that we would go through. Like, you had to earn it.
It was completely a sacred ceremony. And for the people who were conducting that ceremony, there were ritualistic aspects like that. And you did this, and you had somber music, and you folded this way, and you did this. But for the ushers who were delivering communion to the church, that was a service that you were, as the ushers who were passing around, because there's people who won't be able to get up and take communion. There's people who are too elderly, or whatever else. And so all the members of the church, and only members, took communion. Guests did not take communion, but you would provide that as a service to them, so that everybody was doing something that they viewed as being Christ-like. And so the minister would be up there conducting the service, being the representative of Christ for the church and the guidance there. And then all of the deacons, the ushers, everybody else, they would be in the service mode of Christ, providing the communion to everybody who was there. And all of the individuals who were in the church, they were in the state of, we are going to accept this with submission and reverence, and take unto my body your body.
We present ourselves to receive it. Present ourselves to receive communion. Like, you had to walk up to the front, to the altar, to get it, and kneel and wait for it to be presented.
Stuff.
Well, I mean, the Anglican Church is very close to
very close
Catholicism. It's a hair's breadth away from Catholicism.
One of the
Really,
first people I debated was an Anglican priest. It's wild, just the differences between, even between Protestant
you don't even think about them
denominations.
because you see them all as so similar, but they're like important. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to take up time, but it made me think of that.
No, it's fine. And we've got a couple other callers. I want to go through the announcements again real quick since it's been like 45 minutes or so. And that is to remind everybody that in addition to this program, tomorrow is going to be Skeptalk with Erica Gutzik-Gibbon. Tuesdays, Dave Warnock's Dying Out Loud with Dave and Phil Show. Wednesday, I'll be back with J Mike. And Thursdays, TACIS will be at 4 p.m. Central. So everybody has been used to it being at 2 p.m. It's basically an hour and 15 minutes from now. Whatever time that is where you are, that's the exact same time you need to tune in on Thursday to catch, Transatlantic Call-In Show with Dr. Ben and Arden. And the co-host for next week's Sunday show is still up in the air. Let's go on to another caller before you and I get derailed into a discussion about atheism and 23 other things that I've been waiting and itching to talk to you
I've been very good. Brought that up.
I can't wait to have the conversation, but that's not what the show's about.
We need to.
We should. And absolutely. We got Zane in West Virginia. Pronouns are he, him, with who's an atheist with some thoughts on consciousness. So Zane, you're on with Shannon.
Hey Shannon. Hey Matt. How are you both doing?
Hey Zane.
Doing all right.
All right. Yeah, so whenever I say that, I'm not talking about something outside of the body. But I do have a quick argument, and I'm definitely open to changing my mind. It's just something that I think is true. But I think Shannon probably the better person to answer this since she loves things about the brain. So can I just go ahead and run through that argument real quick? It's just 3 lines.
Sure.
Okay. First is consciousness seems to be an emergent property of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
The brain is formed by the direction of our genes, and therefore
the brain is
our
what by the direction of our genes?
Oh, go ahead.
I didn't hear what you said. The brain is
restate that premise.
Oh, the brain is formed by the direction of our genes.
Initially.
And therefore our consciousness will continue so long as our genes continue to thrive.
No.
No?
Yeah, I see a bunch of problems. I see a couple of different
points. But my answer
point them out.
No.
Okay, so problem number one.
I'm sorry. There's just a raw equivocation fallacy between consciousness and brain. They're not synonymous.
And also, even if you granted them as synonymous, right? Like, I mean, I'll grant it for the sake of working through some of the other issues that I think there are. So you're saying, like, if our genes go on, consciousness is individual, insofar as I can tell. So, like, my genes, when I die, no longer exist and amalgamate as me, so my consciousness wouldn't keep going. I mean, I expelled a human at one point, and he is conscious, but he's not me. Like, we're segregated from each other. And another thing is, you said, like, our brain is constructed by our genes. That's like 90-ish% true. There's also, like, a lot of influence because our brain is a part of our body with, what we expose ourselves to, what we eat, what we drink, what we consume, like how we interact, the amount of exercise we get. All of that impacts the construction of our brain in a multitude of ways. So it's not solely our genes. There's a lot of environmental influences that directly impact the constitution of our brain. That makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. I understand what you're saying. So whenever I say that, like, I mean, yes, of course, like, it's not like I think that, like, whenever I eventually have children or a kid, that it's just like whenever my brain dies, like whenever I die, that all of a sudden, like, I'm taking over, like, my kid's brain or something like that. No, I think it's just like, and the hard part is it's obviously unverifiable unless like at some point in the future science is able to like isolate what gene or gene sequence like causes consciousness, like if that's ever figured out and if there's like a unique identifier. But I feel like in some form, like if you have offspring or even, I don't know, backwards to your parents, like say like if I were to die and like my consciousness, my brain obviously would shut down. I feel like I would still be alive since like my, and maybe I'm using the wrong word, since my genes or my genealogy is still propagated, that I would still be alive in that form. Not that I would, and this is like the hard part, I wouldn't be like, oh, now that I'm dead and my consciousness, like maybe I'm viewing them from my, through my kid's eyes or through some other relative, that I would know that. Obviously I wouldn't be able to know that because it's, it's a different brain. It's a different, set of information. That's kind of what I think.
So there's some stuff that you could go down with and try and make it metaphorical or poetry. But first of all, your kids only get half of their genes from you. You don't pass on all of your genes to your kids. So half of you at most could be said to be living on. But even then, once you bake a cake, you can't get the egg back out. So the fact that you put genes into your kids doesn't mean that anything that is identifiably you continues. You had to crack that egg, and different genes work together in different combinations. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want to turn this into the ball python breeder show, but as I spend a great deal of time going through the genetics and genetic combinations for ball pythons and other animals, you can see some really strange stuff, but at no point is the offspring identical to the parent. They may have similar presentation. They are definitely of the same species, but it's not you. And so when you say, it's like at the beginning when you did the equivocation between consciousness and my consciousness. Those are two different things, just like my consciousness and your consciousness are two different things. And as a matter of fact, my consciousness today is different from what my consciousness was yesterday and 5 years ago and 10 years ago, because the consciousness itself that we're identifying is an ongoing dynamic, we think, manifestation or emergent property of what my brain does and how it does it. We may be wrong about that, but even if what we're looking at now is our best guess, that still doesn't mean that if my genes are passed on, that I also continue to live. Just like if I get all of my dad's belongings, those belongings got passed on, but my dad is not still alive. I have memories, but you could say I am my stuff as much or more than I am my genes. And the fact that I can pass on some or all of my genes and some or all of my stuff is perhaps a metaphoric way for me to live on in somebody's mind, but I'm not alive.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's just kind of what, the argument I kind of wanted to throw out there. Like I said, it's not something that I could definitely know, or anybody I guess could definitely know, but I definitely take your points with the flaws in my argument. It's just something that I've thought about for a while, and I kind of wanted to see if some people could poke some holes in it. And I think you guys have, and I do appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, Zane.
All right. Can I say one?
Oh crap!
Oh no!
I thought he was done. Zane, call back in. I'll let you say your one more thing if you really want to. I was just trying to. We figured we were done and wanted to clear up a line so we can get some theist calls calling in. By the way, if you're a theist, you will go to the head of the line. Doesn't matter how bad your arguments are, and yes, it's unavoidable that we may not be very gentle on some of them. I want to know, but it's an appealing idea to think, well, I'm not, religions tell me that I'm going to live on forever in some afterlife, some of them. And I don't have any reason to think that's true, But is there some other way in which I could reasonably conclude that I'm going to live on? And one of the most common is, hey, I'm going to live on in the memory of the people who love me and remember me. Except that's not me living on. That's just their memory. Just like they have those same memories of me right now, and their memories aren't me. And their memories are probably flawed. They're probably not accurate versions of me. But
true. We want to be important. All of us. It's a natural thing to want.
It's one of the things that religions play upon is we have fears of not knowing. We have fears of being alone. We have fears of being irrelevant. Fears of it ending, of stuff not mattering. One of the things that Ayan Hirsi Ali talked about is that atheism didn't provide a sufficient meaning or purpose to life. She didn't say what meaning or purpose she's found to life in Christianity, which is a very interesting question that I'd love to hear what meaning and purpose she gets out of that she finds valuable. But
I want to watch her debate an atheist and defend Christianity. I want that so hard. I want that so bad. It'll never happen. I want it.
I actually have absolutely refused to do that. I did a debate in Canada. I did a couple debates in Canada, but I believe it was Krista Carlo and I did a team debate. And I was talking to Chris about this because when he's asked to do a debate, he on occasion will say, okay, which side did you want me to take? Because he's open to doing this sort of, let me put on that hat.
Devil's advocate. Yeah.
Yeah. I have no problem. I mean, if I
it's good intellectual exercise every so often.
Yeah. It's just, I don't, wow, this is going to sound really bad. Let me find a way to phrase this. It doesn't sound as bad. I could defend Christianity better than the overwhelming majority of people who I've debated on the subject. And
I believe that.
I know how the internet works, and I would rather not have people taking clips out of me defending Christianity, using that to dupe other people, and then potentially setting up more work for me to create videos and constantly. I already, on a fairly regular basis, have to correct people who say I went to seminary. I did not go to seminary. I was studying with the intent of going to seminary when I found my way out of religion. And it wouldn't have had to go to seminary, but man, people just love to, the story of me that some people tell is unrecognizable. Oh yeah. Matt was a Southern Baptist who went to seminary to be a Baptist preacher, and he knows the Bible better than almost anybody you've ever met, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, I was a Southern Baptist. I wanted to be a preacher. I didn't go to seminary. I don't know the Bible better than almost anybody you ever met. Just I know it better than almost everybody at your church who's sitting in a pew. I'm not a fucking Bible scholar in the slightest. All right. We have more callers. Charles in Canada. Charles in Canada is an atheist. We still haven't gotten. Well, we have a theist caller today, or potentially theist caller. They're afraid of you. They're not afraid of me. They follow me around. But Charles in Canada has a question. Thanks so much, lifelong atheist. You're on with Shannon and Matt.
Yeah. I grew up in a home where my parents just didn't mention God, so I was an atheist by default. And and so when my dad said, when you're 18 and you can drink, you can intoxicate yourself with anything you like. So you can choose religion is his little joke. But I saw no reason to. My sister and I were on the same page, and she died a couple of years ago. But about 20 years ago or so, I started I walked down the street, and street lights would go out when I walked under them. And fairly regularly, sometimes weekly, sometimes once a month, but often enough that I asked my friends, does this ever happen to you? I didn't tell them what was happening to me, but I asked them, did you ever see a street light go out? And most of them said, no, never seen it. and there'd be lights on the side of buildings, schools, and stuff. And so I just thought it was a coincidence, but I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want to be accused of having magic powers. And then about 5 years ago, maybe 7, I started getting this like another series of coincidences where I've just been getting like a low level annoyance. Like if I drop something, I know it's Murphy's Law stuff, but it's constantly like if I drop something, it goes and disappears. I put glasses. I've got 20 pairs of glasses I live in a tiny home. It's 240 square feet. Must be 20 pairs of glasses in here that I brought home and can't find. So, just putting things down, they disappear. I'm a place for everything and everything in its place kind of guy. And yet, even though I follow that sort of rule, I put things in their place and they're not there when I go look at them for them. So, I've had the occasional Jesus freak ask me, what if Jesus appeared in puff smoke in front of you? Would you believe then? And I thought of Asimov, and I said, no, I would just think it was like a sufficiently advanced alien screwing with me. So I always thought it'd be really hard to convince me that there was any kind of supernatural forces or beings. I'm a skeptic across the board. But, for, like I said, 20 years of seeing streetlights go out, I live in the bush, literally, so I don't see streetlights anymore. But I'm still, like, if I put a beer down, as far away from where I'm working around the house or something, I'll still kick it over. Every damn beer I put down, I kick it over, I knock something that falls over and hits my beer and knocks it over. So it's just constantly annoying, and the streetlights thing. And then it occurred to me a couple months ago, or maybe 6 months ago, that if there was a God and he was trying to convince me of his existence, this is probably the only way he'd be able to do it, is just make an undeniable series of weird coincidences that I can't explain. So I was kind of hoping you could talk me out of it. I always thought the streetlights thing was just coincidence, and there's 7 billion people on the earth. Somebody's going to see lots of streetlights go out. It's me. But and then the annoyance thing, I was joking with friends about that and being a sign from God. But then for some reason, it just sort of stuck in my head, and it's bothering me more than anything because I don't believe it, but it's still bugging me. And so I was wondering what you guys thought about that.
I've a lot of thoughts, like many.
Yeah, it's a coincidence, or
Yes is the answer. Yes, I think that that's just a series of coincidences that you've amalgamated in your memory over the course of a lifetime that you're using to build a cumulative case for whatever reason. So let's grant it all to you for the sake of argument, right? Let's just say that every time you walked under a streetlight, it went out for a reason, and every time you put a beer down, it got moved in front of your foot so that you could kick it over for the reason. Let's say that both of those are true statements.
Yeah.
What does that lead you to logically? What next step? Therefore, what?
It doesn't, because I'm too much of a skeptic for it to lead farther than is it?
No,
is
I'm
it
granting
possible?
it to you. So we're gonna say it reaches every skeptic bar. Every skeptic bar has been reached. Like we have determined that it is in fact the case. We've put a camera in your house. We've hooked up like some monitors to all the street lights in the neighborhood. And we know that there's absolutely no way it could have gone out except for you going underneath it. And we saw the beer move across the room in front of your foot every single time. We know it met that bar. All of those bars have been met. I think it's the better chance is that it's just confirmation bias, and you're noticing when they're going out and not when they're not going out, and that you're wandering around the house doing work and not noticing where you set down your beer. And the glasses thing, I mean, I'm a glasses hoarder myself. I've got 3 pairs like directly in front of me right now. So those are all mundane things to say with that, right?
I agree,
people with glasses tend to have a lot of glasses, and they're all over the place.
So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, listen.
No,
I'll
to
grant
my
you all
glasses
of it.
are 2 different prescriptions.
Right. Mine aren't, but I just have a lot of glasses. So we'll grant you all of it. It's the therefore that seems silly to me, right? Like therefore God, therefore which God, therefore this is the only way. And I heard you say this would be the only way he could get my attention. If he's God, I feel like a better way, if he's trying to get your attention, instead of trying to trip you with beer and making you wander around in the dark, the best way to get your attention would probably be to be like, hey, I'm God, with like, what's up? Like, believe in me.
Like that would just convince me of an alien.
Anything, something other than that. That's so mundane. This is a series of mundane events that you've tied together.
I'm seriously talking about, probably 50 streetlights I've seen go out and lights on buildings. Like, not just a few, like a lot. More than that, actually, maybe 8 a year for 20 years, something like that. It's a lot. It's not just a few. And everybody I asked hasn't even seen one, or maybe has seen one. So, I mean, again, I know about confirmation bias, and I've largely lived with it for a long time. And it's not just tripping on beers. Like, it's, I put a tool down right behind me, it's gone, and, and then it's where I wasn't walking. It's just weird. Like, and I'm not saying things move around. I'm not saying ghosts are haunting me or anything like that. I know it's all me, being forgetful and stuff like that. I can convince myself of that to a certain extent. But it just, like, so much over so long of a time. And when I talk to people about their experiences, they don't have the same ones. And admittedly, they're just a few friends. I'm not polling the wide, I'm not taking a statistical sample or anything. And I'm not saying I'm convinced it's God. I just mean, it could be anything. It could be aliens screwing with me. I guess it's just kind of got to me a bit. And, I never doubted my skepticism as such. Like, I never really thought that there was a God doing it, but it starts to get overwhelming, I guess. That's all I'm saying. And, yeah, maybe this is a call not worth having. I'm not sure, but
I'm so confused about so many aspects of this. Like, you're like, when you say maybe it's aliens messing with me, why on earth do you think that even gets to be counted as a possibility?
Well, it's not a possibility any more than it's God. I guess it's just because it's been such an overwhelming number of times that I needed reassurance that it could be a coincidence. That's all. And that, as I watch the show, I'm like, they're the people that could do that, right? And so,
For sure.
There's
a joke in my house. Like, if I'm holding an item and I say I'm going to put this somewhere safe, say goodbye to it, because no one's ever going to see it again. Because I'm absolutely going to forget where I put it. That'll be the end of it, right? That'll be it. And I frequently, multiple times a day, I walk around the house with my phone in my hand. And I'm almost never without my phone in my hand. And I'll end up in a room at some point in time and realize, holy shit, my phone's not in my hand. And then I find it on a shelf in the garage because I was in there for 15 seconds and needed my hand for something and spaced out. I don't even remember being in there, but I was probably in there because I wanted to grab something, or I had to put a garbage bag out, or I walked in there and couldn't remember why I was in there and set my phone down. And then 25 minutes later, I got to go figure out where I put my phone. I do that multiple times a week. Multiple times a week, I do something like that. I once found my glasses in the fridge. I was looking for them for 2 days. 2 days. Found them in the fridge.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what happened?
Like
I'm willing to bet is that I opened the fridge or the stove and it fogged up my glasses. And I went, oh, they're foggy. I can't wear them right now. And I put them down and picked something else up and then went about my business for 2 days and then found them in the fridge. That is just the way people live their lives. They wander around forgetting things.
I jotted down a note, which it's going to echo part of something Shannon was saying, but it popped into my head this way. So it's understandable that people might think, hey, is God trying to send me a message? Now, if ever I've sat down and said, I wonder if God is trying to send me a message, one of the first things I think of and realize is that the God that I'm talking about could talk to me. And so if God has a message for me, why on earth would he ever need to use vague, confusing? Why are we playing charades with God? But there's not even a God here doing it. It's like we see a tree rustle and we think, oh, 2 words. And then we lost our keys and it's like a first word, first syllable. No, that's not. Why on earth would anybody think that God is trying to communicate that way? Well, it's just too difficult for our feeble little brains to understand. No, God should be capable, if he created us, of communicating with us. And every religion that's pointing to a God, or almost every one of them, seems to think that God did communicate with us. And so if God can inspire someone to write the Bible, the Quran, any number of other things. If God can convey a strong enough message to get people together on the same page, why on earth would he need you to kick over your beer?
Yeah, I just thought of something. Oh, sorry. Are you finished? Or?
Yeah, I'm done.
I just thought of something while you were saying that hadn't occurred to me before. That if there was a God, he would be able to talk to me in such a way that I would be convinced it was a God and not an alien. Like he would just be speaking to me right down to my soul, which I would have to accept I had one if I thought there was a God. And then I guess there would be no way that I would know that it was that I would be in doubt that it was God. He would be able to just fill me with his presence, as it were, and I would be convinced just by the fact that he could do anything. He can convince me just by saying that, right? So when I talk about the aliens thing, maybe that's not the right way to look at it. Maybe I should just assume if it was a God, he would absolutely be able to convince me. And you're right. It's just that I always thought that because there was no way to convince me by, pooping into existence in front of me, that, the way that to send me a sign would be to do something that was overwhelmingly coincidental, like beyond coincidence, that I couldn't deny that something was happening. That's what I was worried about. Like, is this stuff just way beyond like what is coincidence? But Shannon's made me think that I need to be more mindful of where I put things down, and then I won't be I might not forget where they were, but B, I might be more aware of where I'm putting things in weird places and not where they're supposed to go.
Yeah, with me, I'm so focused on my next task that I'm not paying attention to the things that are in my hands, because I'm thinking about the next task that I'm going to be doing. So I'm not paying attention to the fact that I'm holding something because I'm already running through the next thing I'm about to do because I'm in planning mode. So if I set that thing down, I don't even register that I set it down. That's not an uncommon thing. That happens to people all the time, especially when they're task oriented. And if you're doing things around the house, you're probably task oriented. And also, I don't think that there's any God worth worshiping that would waste good beer. Right?
Yeah,
there's that. I think should go without saying. I don't know. Maybe you drink shitty beer and God is trying to punish you. But if it's good beer, then that God's not even worth worshiping.
Yeah,
wasting
that's true.
beer.
That's another good point. Yeah, he would
Not
know
the
that.
Canadian God, I'll tell you that.
So I'm building that. So I'm not just working around. I'm actually building it. So that, task oriented is pretty good way to say it. Yeah.
Mm.
When you're talking about this stuff and you're like, oh, if God wanted to get my attention, he could do something to make it undeniable, as if there's some sign or something that could make it undeniable. If God wants my attention, there is nothing I could do to stop God from getting my attention. If God wanted to tell me something, there is nothing I could do to stop God from and there's nothing I could do to get it wrong. God can convey, by the definition of the gods that we're talking about, God has the capability to convey a message to me in such a way that I cannot deny it and I cannot get it wrong. And yet constantly it is, God works in mysterious ways and he reveals this and he does this. And, I think I got a sign from God. And I think the devil was messing with me the other day. And I think, this happened and this happened and this happened. Let me see if I can construct a narrative, piecing together these disparate facts in a way that I can tells a compelling story about a God trying to communicate with me, as if God is inept at communication. Now, I think God is incredibly inept at communication by virtue of not existing.
Yeah. And, the whole thing of revealing himself to illiterate goat herders 2,000 years ago instead of coming now when it could be on the internet is a bit silly
it's
too.
Just like all the people who are abducted by aliens were out there
with wander into the desert alone or up the top of a mountain where no animals can even see, or, it's never in a group of people. The message is always just for one person in the woods with golden plates and special decoder glasses and stuff like that. So I'm aware of that too. Yeah. He's not very good at picking profits.
Thanks, Charles. I appreciate the call.
Okay, thank you very much for your help, guys. I feel a lot better. You've done a lot for me. Thank you very much.
Crack your beer. Get a coffee table.
Yeah.
Don't look for patterns. Look for evidence. But all right. We have a theist caller, and as always, they're going to go to the top of the list. Just as a reminder, If you're a theist caller, by all means, please call in, be honest, try and bring your A game, whatever else. All we care about is what belief you have that you're wanting to defend and why you're convinced that it's true. And if you think other people should be convinced as well. Like if you think you should be convinced, but we shouldn't, I'm not that interested. But in this case, we have a rather curious, I already know from the call screener's notes that this is going to be a potentially curious conversation, but we have Jake in Colorado, pronouns are he, him, who's a theist that says he chooses not to believe in a God that he knows exists. So welcome, Jake.
Thanks, Chris. Am I on?
You're on. You might want to move the mic or your phone or mic a little bit further away from your mouth. It's crackling, kind of being overdriven.
Oh, crackling. All right. Let me see. Is that better?
It's all right now. Yeah.
All right. Let me change something up real quick. Okay. How about now?
You're good.
That sounds pretty good.
You are on the line, my friend. Go for it, Jake.
Cool. Yeah, I'm calling in as a first of all, Chris or Matt and Shannon. Yeah. Cool.
Yes.
You have a great show. I've been kind of snooping around a little bit on your 24-hour live stream and all that. And it's interesting to me how, you know, the atheists, you're kind of like third or fourth wave atheists, you know.
Hang on just
yeah, you're kind of like yeah, go ahead.
Arden, do we have a 24-hour live stream?
No, it could be referring to the ACA's 24-hour.
Oh, you're referring to that shitty organization that keeps using the content that I created for them for years in order to keep making money off of it after taking my emails and not letting me have it. So yes, they have a 24-hour stream. I feature on it prominently, which I think is an insult to the people who are still doing work for them. But welcome to this show. How can we help?
Yeah, appreciate it. So I'm calling as a Christian atheist, and it kind of threw the screener off a little bit because he really wanted me to pick, you know, theist or atheist as, you know, kind of fit into the format of the show. But I wonder
if
the
format of the show. It's not about it's not about fitting into the format of the show. You've already said something that is potentially illogical, and what the call screener has written down, I also think is wrong. But let's get to it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so Christian atheism, I mean, it's a pretty simple concept if you think about it. Because, you know, according to Christianity, they saw Jesus die on the cross, right? So what does the death of Christ really mean to, you know, to believers and non-believers? So, you know, to take it a step further, you can pretty much argue that atheism is actually codified within Christianity, and it makes Christianity the ultimate atheistic religion.
Okay, stop.
So I wonder if you've ever thought about that.
Stop. Nothing you said makes any sense. Nothing you've said makes any sense.
Okay.
I'm aware of Christian atheists. And generally, when people talk about Christian atheists, what they're saying is, I don't believe in God, but I believe in the tenets of Christianity, the structure of Christianity. It is
that's what they say. That's not what I said.
I'm still talking, Jake. It is preposterous to say that you believe there is a God, you know there is a God, or you believe there is a God, and that you're an atheist.
No,
that's not possible.
No, I can say that I know. I can say that I know there is a God, but I choose not to believe in it. There's a difference.
No, you don't. No,
that's
you can't.
That's exactly what atheism is.
Jake,
you choose not to believe. It's a choice.
No, Jake, would you shut the fuck up and listen? We're trying to fix this. Belief
it's a total
is not a choice. Shut the fuck up. Belief is not a choice. It is not. All right, now I'm going to mute you, and you're going to stay muted until Shannon and I decide we're done discussing this and to bring you back in, because you are clearly unwilling to listen. Belief is not a choice. Belief is not a mere act of volition or will. And atheism is not a choice to not believe in a God. Atheism is the position of not being convinced that a God exists. Theism is the position of being convinced that a God exists. So if you are convinced that a God exists, there's only two categories. You are either convinced that a God exists, or you are not convinced that a God exists. This is logical necessity, identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle. A and not A. A is I am convinced that a God exists, and not A is I am not convinced that a God exists. You cannot be both in the same way at the same time. And belief is not merely an act of volition. I didn't choose to be an atheist. I am no longer convinced that a God exists. So you can play with what what labels you want to put on it. And Christian atheism is a thing, as I mentioned, where people who don't believe in a God still believe and value the tenets of Christianity and the messages that are there. But that is not the same thing as saying I both believe and don't believe in a God, which is a logical absurdity. Shannon, you got anything to add before we bring him back?
Uh, it seems as though he's maybe trying to make this some sort of like weird gotcha, like Romans 1:20 sort of thing where, everybody believes in their heart that there is a God and just, denies it, suppressing the truth and unrighteousness sort of nonsense. But it does cognitively, it makes no sense. It's like it's a massive contradiction that entails a significant amount of logical problems as well. That's like me saying I am having this conversation with you, but also believe that I am simultaneously not having this conversation with you. Those they can't be true simultaneously. I can't be engaged in something actively and from a cognitive perspective and also not believe I am engaged in something from a cognitive perspective. Those two ideas cannot exist simultaneously.
Additionally, the second statement that Jake made also was a bunch of nonsense, because he said Christians saw Jesus die on the cross. What does that mean for blah, blah, blah? Irrespective of whether or not someone saw someone die, that's not what Christianity is, and that's not the belief, because there's also the resurrection component as well. But when you're talking about what Christians believed or what they saw, that has nothing to do with whether or not you've got doxastic volunteerism, which is choosing your own beliefs, your own mental state of being convinced. That's completely separate. You can be a nominally Christian, a culturally Christian atheist if you want to, but you cannot both believe and disbelieve in a God. That's just not possible in the same time, in the same way. Let's try it again, Jake.
Yeah.
I didn't say I don't. Wait, hang on. I didn't say I believe and disbelieve. It's I know that God exists, but I choose not to believe. What you guys just told.
Okay, I'm going to mute you and make this clear so that we can make sure you hear us, because when you're talking, you can't hear us. You said you know that God exists. Well, knowledge is a subset of belief. Therefore, that means you believe that God exists. And then you say you choose not to believe in him. That's wrong.
Right.
You can choose not to act as if you believe in him. You can choose not to profess belief in him. But if you say, I know a God exists, you are saying, I believe a God exists. And therefore, the next sentence cannot sensibly be, I choose not to believe. That's just not possible. You can choose not to act as if you believe. You can choose to say you don't believe, but you cannot both be convinced and not convinced. That's just not possible.
Yeah, you can't say
Try
I
again.
choose not to believe the thing I believe.
Is that a
Which is what you're
question? There
saying.
was
I
a
choose
beep,
not to
sorry.
believe the thing that I believe. It's a nonsense
So
statement.
atheism isn't a choice then.
No, of course
Correct.
it's not a choice.
It's not a choice. You don't choose to believe atheism.
Correct.
You don't choose to be an atheist.
Correct.
Really? That's interesting.
Correct.
So how'd you
Hang on. I'm going to mute you for a second, because now, Jake, I don't believe that you're actually calling in and unaware of this. Now, granted, you probably haven't been watching. I've been watching your 24-hour streams. Well, they're not mine. That's somebody leeching, but we've been saying this forever. Like, this is not new. You don't choose your beliefs. Every belief that you hold, not just atheism or Christianity, is something that you have become convinced of, and you can be convinced for good reasons or bad reasons, but there's some process, and it can be emotional, it can be logically flawed. It's the reason why we try to learn and understand about sound epistemology. But none of us are saying we chose atheism. In fact, it is Christians that are constantly doing the choose Jesus, which is a nonsensical thing. In addition, because the variety of libertarian free will that they think you have, we definitely don't have, no matter what type of free will we may or may not have. But you don't choose your beliefs. Beliefs are mental states that are the result of becoming convinced for either good reasons or bad. This is nothing new. This is nothing we haven't said 1,000 times before. I don't know why you're surprised, but let's try again.
Okay,
back,
cool.
Jake.
Yeah, I mean, that checks out. I just wanted to get your opinion on, what Christian atheism could mean. If, you see God die, what does that do to your belief system?
Well, nobody's
Christians
ever
believe
seen
that,
God die.
that their God died on the cross.
Nobody's ever seen God die, and no Christian believes that God died.
Well, it's part of the story. I mean, do you read it literally? Are you a literalist?
No.
Do you read everything literally, or
no? Holy shit!
sounds like you are.
It's like sounds like I am what?
Yeah.
Sounds like
You're a literalist. You read things.
You are a monumentally broken piece of shit who spent part of your Sunday calling in to argue about something that you don't understand and don't believe in order to pull a Baba Booey that's going to get deleted from the show. I'm going to put my pause bars up right here. And when the producer comes through to cut this all out, they can stop right here and cut while Shannon's still got her finger up, and nobody will know that it happened because you, sir, are irrelevant and don't matter. And now I got your number, bitch.
Piece of shit.
It's all good. Oh my God.
Really?
There's a call that I'm not going to jump on just yet, but because we got other theist callers. So Abdul in California, pronouns he, him. Welcome to the Sunday show. You'd like to argue and ask us a question about Islam. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I just I was pondering on a question. I would like to just put that forward as to why I feel Islam is actually the true religion. Why I think God actually exists. So when you look at the prophethood of Muhammad, right? So Muhammad was actually an illiterate that could not read or write, but God actually wanted to show his wonders through Muhammad. So he chose an illiterate person where he used, the angel to actually reveal those messages through that person. Then, one day, automatically, this illiterate person just started he was able to read, and he was just saying all these wonderful things, which are actually revelation from God, for example. So I just wanted to put that forward. If that is not God showing himself.
Abdul.
Sorry? Yeah.
You're saying that all of a sudden he could read?
Yeah, he could read, and he was actually...
No. My understanding is that he remained illiterate his whole life.
Sorry?
My understanding is that he remained illiterate his entire life. But in any case, how does this in any way prove a God?
I think that is actually God showing how his wonders.
I know you think that. The question was, how does that show a God?
I know it doesn't really show a God per se. It's not like, God in his physical form appearing, this is God. But I feel like God might not want to do that, but God is actually just showing us that he actually exists by actually putting these wonders down.
I'm still confused here. Abdul, here's what I'm trying to get to. Let's imagine, because there's some confusion about whether or not Muhammad was illiterate, whether or not he remained illiterate. You have no way to demonstrate any of that. So we'll set that aside for a second. But let's just assume that there was someone who was illiterate and they all of a sudden were able to read. Yep. What reason could one give to say that this is evidence that God made this change?
I think the evidence I could give, people could give in general, is that if we look at the chain of events that led to that person to be able to read. And as for Muhammad, we actually have evidences that, this person was actually an illiterate all his life. Then he went to the mountain, then woke up one day, came down with the revelation, and he automatically was able to read just within those.
Abdul, listen. I've already said, for the sake of argument, let's assume that Muhammad couldn't read, went up to the mountain, came down and could read. What argument and evidence can you present that shows that the reason he went from not being able to read to being able to read is because God changed that? How do you
Okay,
demonstrate that God did that?
the evidence
How do you,
I'll give.
listen,
Okay.
listen. Don't just say the evidence. Make an argument supported by actual objectively verifiable evidence that shows that God changed someone from being illiterate to literate. How do you do that?
Yeah, so the way I'll do that is if we can consider the amount of days Muhammad spent on the mountain. And I think there's actually a verifiable evidence that Muhammad spent 3 days. And so you can't tell me that within 3 days, someone would actually go up the mountain, learn how to read just within 3 days.
Okay.
Stop. Learning how to read actually take years. And also.
Stop. Listen. Your argument that you just presented is there is no possible way other than God doing it for someone to go up a mountain for 3 days and come back down able to read. How do you demonstrate that God is the only way that could happen?
Okay, the way I would demonstrate God is the only way that could happen is how long it takes like a human being, like maybe let's say, for example, individuals, how long does it take people to learn how to read, for example? I think it takes years. It's not something that just happens automatically. It takes a lot of people years, depending on like the person's ability.
Abdul, I
Yeah.
fully understand. I fully understand and agree that the normal way people learn to read can't be done in 3 days. But if you got it done in 3 days, how do you show that God is the only possible way for that to happen?
I think the only way we can show God is the only possible way for that to happen is, it's through the wonders that it actually happened in 3 days. That is what I believe. I don't know if you fathom with that argument.
So if I can bridge the gap between the two of you, I think functionally what you're saying, Abdul, is that learning to read in 3 days is basically impossible. And the only person who can do something that's basically impossible is God. Therefore, I think God did it. Is that a fair bridge between you and Matt? Okay.
Yes,
there you go. There you go, Matt. I think that bridged that gap. That's, I think, what he's saying is he thinks that otherwise it would be impossible because 3 days is too short a period of time. And the only alternative explanation he can conceive of is that that must be God.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I helped. I did a helping.
Yeah, but I don't know what Matt thinks about that. So, it's actually an argument I've actually had on my head for like years now. Because
it is a fallacy.
Yeah.
It is a fallacious argument. It is a fallacious argument to state that God is the only way that could happen. You don't know how that could happen. You don't even know if God could do it. You don't know that there is a God who could do it. It's like saying, here's a dead body. How did it die? Well, nobody else was in the room, so God must have given this person a heart attack. You can't reach that conclusion. It's called an argument from ignorance in some senses, where this is true until you prove it false. But in the case that you're talking about, is an argument from personal incredulity is the fallacy, where you think that God is the best explanation for Muhammad's illiteracy. You think that's the best explanation with zero demonstration that God is possible, that God did it, anything else. You're just saying, I can't think of any other way that this could happen, therefore it's God. And that is a fallacious argument that I summarily dismiss. Meanwhile, the only reason we can have a discussion about that is because we granted, for the sake of argument, your claim that Muhammad couldn't read, went up on a mountain for 3 days, and came back down able to read, which you can't demonstrate is true. So we have a proclaimed supposed miracle with zero way to confirm that it actually happened. And you're taking that and you're saying, if it happened, the only way it could have happened was God, which is something else you can't confirm. The plural of anecdote is not data. And when you compound your anecdotes, they don't get stronger, they get weaker. So this is in no way is an argument for the existence of God. You can't prove that it happened. You can't prove that if it happened, God's the only way that it could happen.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think what Mars is saying here is that Muhammad could actually have possibly know how to read before going up the mountain.
Oh my God.
Or the
Abdul,
story
I'm
never
muting you.
happened.
Don't you ever fucking say, I think what Matt is saying is, after I clearly said something, and then pretend that I said Muhammad must have been able to read beforehand. That's a fucking lie. It's not what I said. It's not in the ballpark of what I said. I'm going to unmute you. You can apologize, retract it, and try again to summarize what I've said, because I didn't give you any explanation for how Muhammad could read. I pointed out that you can't demonstrate when or whether or not he could. You're unmuted.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm actually, so apologies for that I might have said that you actually said that. Yeah, apologies. Yeah, but I kind of like I've noted what you said in regards to that. I think the argument you're making is that we actually don't really have like a supporting evidence to support if he was actually unable to read, or if the fact that
Or if he went up a mountain, or if he came back and was able to read. Like there's a multitude. He's basically saying that it's conjecture all the way down. Right? You're starting with the premise that, you know, your specific God exists, that Allah exists. That's your starting point. And then you're saying, okay, well, this story that is designed and built around this God is evidence for that God. And here's one of the stories within you know, within this tradition. And I see that story that's within the tradition that's designed to prove this God. One of those stories, if it's true, would prove that God. And that's both a duh. It's also working backwards. It's all of the fallacies Matt listed. And your step one would be to demonstrate that that story itself was even accurate as it's depicted and as you're relating it to us. So like you're not quite to step one yet.
Yeah, I think the reason why I would say the story is accurate is because people actually witnessed this. So this was like on a witness account, and this was actually stated in the Hadith, and you know, a lot of people witnessed it. It was like, you know, a witness, people that actually lived around the Prophet witnessed it.
How do you know it's not a lie?
Huh?
How do you know it's not a lie?
Okay, how do I know it's not a lie? I actually did not see people that witnessed.
So how do you know it's not a lie?
Okay, I don't.
What's funny?
I don't.
I'm sorry.
I don't know
what's funny?
what to say, but sorry.
What's funny?
I can't say it's a lie because, so when you ask me how do I know it's not a lie, I know it's not a lie because I think what's been passed down were actually actual historical accounts of Muhammad's life.
Oh, can I ask you a question? I don't mean to interrupt you for this. Just one sec. I do mean to interrupt you, actually. That was a lie. I do mean to interrupt you. So, Abdul, like if you're saying we should believe any religion that touts to have eyewitness accounts that corroborate the tenets of that religion, then I would have to simultaneously believe in Christianity, Islam, and Mormonism for sure, because they all use that talking point in the same manner, right? Like Christians will talk about the eyewitnesses of Jesus' life and resurrection. Muslims will talk about the eyewitness accounts of Muhammad and his life, and Mormons will talk about the eyewitness accounts of Joseph Smith. So there needs to be some sort of like breaker there, right? There needs to be some way that I, as a person, can look at all three of those stories. All three of those stories lead towards some sort of religious conclusion, and all three of those stories tout eyewitnesses as the evidence for that. So my way of looking at it is there's a broader chance, a much broader chance, that when people say they have eyewitnesses, it's much more mundane claim that those eyewitnesses are either mistaken or they're potentially motivated to lie, or they were never eyewitnesses to begin with because we're talking about centuries later, or their stories had been corrupted in some fashion, than it is for me to just say the accounts as they are being given to me now, hundreds and hundreds of years later, are something that I should just take at face value, especially given that eyewitness account is kind of not that great to begin with anyway from a psychological standpoint. It's very easily corruptible.
I have a question for Abdul. Well, actually, I have several, but we'll set aside what he thought was funny a minute ago. Did Jesus raise the dead, Abdul?
Jesus?
Did Jesus raise Lazarus from the dead?
I don't think so.
Why not? It's been passed down.
I don't think that was actually what happened, and even according to the Quran, I don't think.
Cool.
Jesus
So you think you heard a story about Jesus raising the dead? You don't think it happened, but you heard a story about Muhammad becoming literate in 3 days, and you do think it happens. What's the identifiable evidence that shows why one of those is believable and one of them's not?
That's
yeah, I don't know what to say, but
it's a hard question, right?
yeah, it's a question because
like that goes to my point. You're saying you're making kind of like a special pleading for this group of eyewitnesses, or what you perceive as eyewitnesses.
I'm making, the reason why I might want to believe those set of accounts rather than believe the fact that Lazarus was rose from the dead was that Muhammad actually came to correct a lot of misconceptions surrounding the life of Jesus, for example, and those accounts
wait, Abdul,
run, right?
Abdul, what on earth makes you think that Muhammad is correcting information about Jesus? What if Muhammad was wrong?
Yeah, I think it's one of the reasons God sent the revelations to Muhammad. Maybe it's because
you don't know that God sent any revelations to Muhammad. You're assuming that.
Yeah, we believed it to be so.
Yes, I understand you believe it. We're asking, why should someone believe it? You're saying Jesus didn't raise the dead, and you don't believe that story, but you believe a different story about Muhammad, and you believe that Muhammad was right when he supposedly corrected information about Jesus. What is the evidence-based argument for why we should believe Muhammad and not Jesus?
I don't really have any reasons to believe this, but it's just like faith, right? It's
okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're getting somewhere, Abdul. It's just faith. You don't have a good reason. Thank you. Is there any position, like, for example, somebody could say they believe Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, and they could say that their reason for that is just faith, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And so when somebody says that they believe something and it's just based on faith, not only do they not have any way to demonstrate that they're correct, but none of the rest of us have any way to demonstrate who's correct either. So a Jesus believer could say that they just believe on faith that Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, and you can say that you believe that's wrong and yours is based on faith, which means that faith is not a reliable method to discern the truth, is it?
Yeah, it's not. But Matt, I think in response to that,
no, but you're right there. And then he said, "But." But
do you care? Do you care whether or not your beliefs are true?
Of course, I do care whether or not my
beliefs are true.
And I think I do believe.
You say, of course, but then you also said that your beliefs are based on faith, which you also acknowledged is not a path to truth. So if you care whether or not your beliefs are true, then you shouldn't be believing things based on faith, because you can believe anything, whether it's true or not, based on faith. You should be looking for a good reason to believe something, and faith is not a good reason. So when you have a good reason to believe that Islam is true, let me know.
Okay, can I say something?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so before the whole revelation to Muhammad, right? We all know how the Arabs were like, they were just like, nomads, rearing sheep in Arabia. They weren't even like that really powerful. But when the revelation came, Muhammad, actually united Arabia. And what they did after that was actually magnificent. That, they actually came out and were
Okay,
able to like use
this
that power
doesn't
of
this
Islam to actually
are you
expand and
is this
conquer a
a
lot
is
of
this a
places.
one no
And
Abdul, like you're saying Muhammad did some stuff that I think is neat. Is
Do you know how
I'm
many
saying, which may be the
people-
case. I don't know. I'm not an Assyriologist,
Do
but
you know how many
this
people believe that Christianity has made their lives better and has changed civilization for the better?
right.
Billions. And Christianity's already more
billions of
popular.
people, right?
Yeah, Christianity is more popular than Islam. Christianity has in fact has impacted more people and more cultures for longer than Islam. So if your argument is Muhammad got a revelation and the Arab people benefited from it, well, Christians could make the exact same argument that Jesus came and fundamentally changed the world and went from 0 followers to taking over the world on followers in a really, really short period of time. And you would both be correct in that something happened and something changed after that. But you would also both be
Yeah.
fallacious, because post hoc ergo propter hoc is a fallacy, that after this, therefore because of this. And you can't assert that it's because anything in Islam or Christianity is true. Religious ideas change people and change the world. And some of them change the world for the better, even though the religion itself is not true. If you went through all of that discussion and said, can I say just one more thing, and thought I was just going to let you spew another fallaciously written treatise on how Islam is real, you were much mistaken. You need to go find actual evidence for your positions and not make fallacious appeals to the popularity of our idea, how many people believe it, how much they think it's changed or benefited them. Because I'll tell you this, Islam, while it has done many things for many people, is absolutely the harbinger of doom that despises women, despises mathematics, and actually cripples the brain and the culture to the point where the Arabic culture, who discovered 0, now have 0 because of Islam. Islam is a prison for the mind that was built by a child raping liar.
Matt, can I say something?
No, I think you
I feel
should go
like
think for a while.
that's a lie.
No, it's not a lie. Well, it's not a lie in the sense that I'm telling you what Muslims have actually said about Muhammad. I don't know whether or not he actually had sex with the 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old that he married. I can't prove that. But I'm just telling you what Muslims think, and how I sat there and debated Daniel Hikikachu and others who have defended this notion that pretend that child marriage is it's just some cultural norm that the secular West is opposed to. It's rape. Muhammad, if he did what the writings say he did, was a vile, disgusting, child raping piece of human garbage. And if a God chose that person to be the prophet of that religion, that God is an immoral fucking monster as well. You should be embarrassed trying to make light, trying to make good of this. Anyway, we got another theist, kind of. Not really.
Kind of. Okay.
Maybe.
Kind of.
We got Song in Taiwan. Song's been waiting for a while. Has a question.
Love that name.
Is a secular Buddhist, so not a theist, but I misread,
hello, can you hear
misread
me?
the actual thing. So welcome, Song. What do you got?
Oh, hi. Yeah. Well, I'm a secular Buddhist, which is basically an atheist that enjoys incense. But
maybe I am too. I'll have to explore that a bit more.
Anyway, I just wanted to call in on behalf of my LGBTQI plus brothers and sisters, and also I think Matt experienced tonight some of the horrific bigotry that we are experiencing at the moment, especially in the trans community. And I would just like to ask, why is it that gay people or members of the LGBTQ community will adhere to a Christianity no matter what it says, even though it's so clearly homophobic in the extreme, and you can point it out to them in the Greek, you can point it out to them in the Hebrew, and they will still somehow make excuses for it. And I just want to know, in your opinion, how does one get around that to make it clear to them that this is not something that either supports or loves or ever will accept them, ever?
I have some answers to that, because there's people who are actively attempting to do reconciliation of those chapters. I don't know that it's a way to do it successfully, but there are people like Colby, I can't remember his last name, Colby Martin, who wrote a book called On Clobber, who I've spoken to recently, who is, like a preacher. He's a Christian who wrote a book about what they call the clobber passages, which I think there's like 7 of them in the Bible, that very clearly and explicitly state God's opinion on the LGBTQ community. And he works towards, from an academic perspective, trying to explain how they could be interpreted in a very, very different way. Now, I don't know if I buy into it. I'm not a biblical scholar, nor am I a theologian, but I do respect that form of work. We're not going to make everybody not Christian, obviously, but I think it's worthwhile work to attempt to make Christians less bigoted. And if that's something that can be successful, then I think within religious communities, there is like an uptick of people. Luckily, not enough, but there is a bit of an uptick of people who are deconstructing, not necessarily fully deconverting, but deconstructing their faith and putting it against what I think are probably their humanist values. But they're trying to kind of like build a space within Christianity, like a deconstruction space, where they're enacting sort of humanist values, but still holding on to what I think might be the artifice of their belief. So I think that there are spaces like that being created, and I mean, thank goodness for that, because I'd rather those spaces exist to expand the network of people who are safe for LGBT people than they not exist. So I think that is kind of the answer for people in the extant community. When somebody is gay, I think one of they start and are raised this way, they tend to kind of stay in the closet and feel a not insignificant amount of kind of like self-hate, because they think that they can do something to change it. I'm one of the people who, growing up, thought there was something just fundamentally wrong with me. I was I was perverse, right? I thought I was perverse, and there was something fundamentally wrong with me. So I think that you still kind of prioritize your faith over yourself when you believe it is true, because it is so desperately embedded in you. And I think that's the answer to the other part of your question.
I also grew up like that. Yes, I also grew up like that, unfortunately.
I'm so sorry.
And I tried to look. I was Church of England. I grew up Anglican. So I
Team
gave the church a lot of leeway.
Me too. Yeah, so did I.
So I gave the church a lot of leeway because there are some really sincerely nice people in the Anglican church, as you well know. And but then here in Taiwan, where I've been living for the past 20 years, I don't know if you know, they recently passed marriage equality here. Not full equality, but we're getting there. And I was in the Episcopal Church. I went to a service, and I remember one of the preachers standing up and saying how unfortunate it is that they're now destroying family values. And I just remember, oh no, this is enough. And I just stood up and I walked out, and I never went back.
Mm-hmm.
And And since that day, I won't say I'm militantly opposed to Christianity, but I'm certainly deeply skeptical of claims of tolerance and acceptance, because you just scratch that little veneer, and beneath it you find extreme homophobia, and I'm not willing to accept it.
Nor should you.
Yeah, I will say, Song, I don't know about other areas, but there are definitely some rainbow-covered LGBTQ friendly churches in the United States. They are quite often rightly viewed as heretical and unbiblical by others. You know, it's very difficult to say, oh yeah, we're a gay friendly church and we're going to do gay marriages and we're, you know, love is love and all this other stuff, when you've got a Bible that specifically says that two dudes who have sex should be killed. It's rough. And so, but it's one thing to say the Bible is vehemently opposed to homosexuality, but not necessarily vehemently opposed to lesbianism, and may actually be in favor of some lesbian stuff. But gay men, the Bible doesn't like them. But that's what the Bible says is separate from what a particular group of Christians or particular denomination share. So where you were asking, I think, if I understood correctly, how you could let the LGBTQ community know that they're never going to find love and acceptance within a Christian community because underneath the surface is bigotry. I think that's a mistake. I think pointing out to them that the ones that are likely to give them love and acceptance are doing so not because of anything within Christianity or within Christendom, but because there's something within them that transcends the bigotry that is the foundation of Christianity to make their version of it better. And while they may be able to find a queer-friendly church for them to attend and a community there, and those are wonderful things, because I'm tired of hearing people being alone and lonely. There's enough of the bigotry making things worse without compiling that with having no community and nobody to interact with. So instead of saying you won't find instead of saying you won't find acceptance here, it could be, I hope you find acceptance there, but we should be working to build communities separate from religion that are accepting, welcoming places for the queer community at large, so that people don't feel that they need to go to a church that might turn on them later. Because at the end of the day, even the most queer-friendly church in San Francisco that's marching in gay pride events has to point to the same label, Christian, the same book, the Bible, the same foundational history and doctrines that Westboro Baptist Church, who are famous for their "Don't Hate Fags" signs, they all point to the same thing. And so the liberal and progressives are providing cover and legitimacy. Well, they're not providing legitimacy to the more fundamentalists, because the fundamentalists have the Bible to support their legitimacy with. The gay friendly churches have no legitimacy from the standpoint of Christianity. I appreciate what you're trying to do, and I think you'd be fine either way. But I really think we just need to let people know you might find a Christian church that's going to be loving and accepting of you and supportive of queer community in general. But they are still tied to this problem.
Yeah, you're a better Buddhist than me, Matt. Far better one. Yeah,
sorry, I was just agreeing with Matt and saying that the tide could turn.
It's just very difficult for me as a gay person. You know, I've been through quite a horrific time in my life. I grew up in Africa, and as you know, it's not exactly the best time to grow up under apartheid. Whether you were white, black, gay, whatever, it was a horrible time. And so I've seen and experienced terrible things that have made me incredibly skeptical of Christianity. But I agree with you that there are churches that can make place for LGBTQ people. And thanks for that. I'll try to be more open-minded in that regard.
I think one of the big things we can do is remind them that while certainly some Christian churches can make space for the queer community, we could probably do a better job of making better spaces for them because we're not carrying the baggage. And working towards that goal is something that we've kind of all got to do.
Yeah, because like I said, the tide could turn at any point in time because all somebody has to do is point to the passage and make a compelling argument to the congregation that already believes in it, that the interpretation is incorrect, and then you backslide immediately. Because the raw material is there.
Yeah. It's not only in Christianity. You find this, even in Buddhism. Buddhism has the same thing. You have to really read between the lines and find what works for you in order to weed out the nasty bits and pick the cherries. Very unfortunate. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for answering my question. I really appreciate it. And your show has accompanied my dishwashing and cooking on many a happy occasion here in Taiwan.
Oh, good.
Well, thank you. I'm glad we've helped you become more productive at and cleanliness is supposedly next to godliness, so maybe we're on to something.
There you go. Go team.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thanks for calling.
Thanks, Song.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. So we're down to what maybe, if we may have to end slightly early, but we may be on to what could be the last call of the day here. And this one is, I almost feel like it's a setup.
Oh, God, I'm not ready. Not again. Please no.
It is someone who's calling in who wants to talk about atheism. Now,
is it really?
Yes, it really is.
That's amazing. Okay. Someone's trying to start a fight between me and you. All right, let's go.
Before we actually get to this call, why don't you take a minute and tell everybody
go collect myself?
How you view atheism, how you would describe it.
Oh my God, I'm not even ready. All right, so I believe that, see if I can formulate this well, because I know you're going to pick apart everything I say if I'm not meticulous in my articulation. So I don't think that given the construction of what I perceive as extant reality, any definition of a God that I've been exposed to makes sense within the confines of that reality as I perceive it, or isn't filled with some sort of internal contradiction that makes it unviable. And I don't know if I articulated that well because I was super on the spot.
That's all right. I'm going to bring Emery in. Emery's pronouns are they, them. They're in California. They want to talk about atheism. I have no idea where Emery falls on this atheism discussion, but because it came up the other day and Emery's called in here, I wanted to give Emery the opportunity to explain what they think atheism is and what they think about it. And then I will either chime in or let the two of you fight it out as the case may be. So welcome, Emery. You're on the line with Shannon and Matt.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. So when I first deconstructed from Christianity, I strongly identified with atheism because to me, where I started was like, since there's pretty substantial evidence that, like, you know, a caller earlier was saying about how different cultures have all these different ideas and, you know, the whole thing of like, they can't all be right or whatever. To me, I was like, well, it's pretty obvious that these are man-made. And like this idea of a God is just kind of the way we fill in the gaps of things we don't know. And so to me, it was just like something that just didn't make sense. Like, and, you know, based on what I knew about science and how the universe started, whatever, like, I was like, this doesn't make sense. But more recently, since watching a lot more of The Line and stuff, I'm kind of like, okay, I see where Matt's coming from with all this of like, you know, I've heard bits and pieces, but I haven't heard your full position on it. But I've also heard Shannon's side, and I don't know exactly where I fall, but I see, I think, more where Shannon's coming from if I had to choose a side, but I wanted to like since you guys brought it up earlier, and it's something that I found interesting. I wanted to kind of hear what you all had to say about it.
Okay.
So I don't want to saddle anybody with anybody else's views, but the more normative, well, normative is a problem. The original name for this, as far as I'm aware, is theological non-cognitivism. And
Yeah.
one of the biggest proponents of theological non-cognitivism is Massimo Pigliucci, although there were others that mentioned it and talked about it. I know, well, I better not talk about what I know or who I know and anything else. Doesn't matter. The idea is that the God concept is not an intelligible or meaningful concept. And that's the base of it. Now, what people will say is stuff like what Shannon said and what Emery said, which is, I just think that all the gods that I've been presented with, they either don't make sense or they've got some internal contradiction. And I will say that you don't have to take this from me, you talk to somebody else. If you're able to say the God concept you're talking about is contradictory or doesn't make sense, given what I know, then you are already denying theological non-cognitivism, because you're able to now have a conversation about what this God means or what it would mean in the context of the world, which means it's not unintelligible and meaningless. It's not cognitively meaningless. It's not devoid of content. And the other reason or evidence I think that that's false is that there are billions of people who have found something in this God concept that they agree on and that they can talk about and share. I agree the God concepts are confusing, contradictory, in conflict with nature, in conflict with evidence around this. None of them are survive reasoned warrant for belief, but I can't call them cognitively meaningless, because that would mean that I've spent, well, not for this reason. It would just also mean that I've spent the last 20 years of my life having deep discussions with sincere believers in a concept that is meaningless. A meaningless concept is something like, well, once upon a time, it would have been Fergal, Burgle, Minergal, Burgle, because I invented that gobbledygook as a specific example of something that was devoid of any cognitive meaning or any intelligibility. But since then, Fergal, Burgle, Minergal, Burgle has taken on a life of its own to be sort of a meta replacement for that. So now it has something that you can talk about, but it's still more nonsensical than not. And so I see the appeal of agnosticism and igtheism as viewed from theological non-cognitivism, but I think it would be better to say, first of all, I'm an atheist, I'm an agnostic, I'm an agnostic atheist, or however you want to look at it. And the God concepts that I've been presented with aren't believable, but I understand their appeal to some people. I think it's fallacious. You can have those conversations about them. And that's the biggest reason why I cannot call myself an atheist, because it would almost be an admission that I've been sitting here going blah, 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 blah for 20 years. And actually for longer than that, because I was blah, 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 blah about the same God for the 20 or 30 years before that.
Okay, I have thoughts. I have a couple of thoughts. So it seems to me like what you're saying, you think it isn't what, like, maybe I'm using the wrong label then, but that's not the way that I perceive it. So just the fact that you can have a conversation about a concept doesn't mean that it has any like value to how you interact with reality.
Right?
Agreed, so,
but that's not what
right,
this is.
Okay. Well, like I said, I might be using the label wrong. So if that's the case, then maybe we need a new label for what my position is. Maybe there isn't one. maybe it just most closely aligns with atheism, because I'm not saying that the concept of God, like God concepts, don't contain any content. I'm saying that they don't contain any value that can be there's no value that can be derived from them when interacting with reality, and they themselves, when you drill them down, held to scrutiny, become nonsense, right? They're either internally inconsistent or they hold no content of value, and therefore I don't think any of them makes sense. So I guess it perhaps to that degree, I don't think that they hold any content. If I'm saying they don't hold content, and my definition of content is anything that I see as having value with my interaction with or understanding of reality. Now, if you're using content to mean just anything that can be discussed, then I mean we can talk about imaginary things. We can imbue things with content like Fergal, Burgle, Nurgle, Burgle, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily have value with interacting with. Well, no, they would then have value with interacting with reality as the concept. I don't think God does. Okay, yeah, keep go. Because I'm thinking it through as I talk.
Let me give you a couple of examples, and I'm not trying to throw Emery to the wolves or anything. Let me give you a couple of examples. First of all, Noam Chomsky came up with an example of a phrase that is nonsense, and that is colorless green ideas sleep furiously. Each one of those words we know and understand, and each one of those words conveys meaning and has some usage. But together, that thing does not express any sort of thought that could be assessed as a package.
With you.
Colorless green ideas sleep furiously. One of the other famous examples, oddly, is from Lewis Carroll. So Jabberwocky. 'Twas brillig in the slithy toes did gyre and gimble in the wave, and mimsy where the boar grows and the moon grows out grabe. Beware the Jabberwock. Anyway, it keeps going. That is a category of statement saying a maximally powerful being exists outside of space and time and interacts with space and time may ultimately be false. It may be of no value to my life. It may be something that we cannot demonstrate. It may be unfalsifiable. But what I don't see it as is unintelligible. We're able to...
Right.
I can't pull a concept out of Noam Chomsky's thing. I can pull a concept out of this. And because there's a good argument to be made that our invention of God...
I don't know if I can, though. So maybe this is where we deviate, because I don't know if I can, because I don't know what it means for something to exist outside of time and space and reality.
You don't know what it is,
I can't conceptualize that.
Oh, yes, you can.
I can't. Okay. I'm telling you, I can't.
You can in the sense of the sentence that I constructed. We don't need to know what it's like. You don't have to be able to experience or say, what is it to exist outside space-time? That we're just including as a God is not limited to space-time. And it doesn't matter if you know what those limits are, you still are able to process that as a sensible construct, saying that, the limits that I use, the limits, it is, you can make sense of it. It is, here's all the things that you can do, or here's how space-time limits you. I'm talking about a being that isn't limited to that. Same as if you lived forever on Earth, you don't know what it's like to live on a planet in Alpha Centauri, but you can conceptualize a planet in Alpha Centauri as a place where someone might exist.
I mean, because it's within the universe, though, right? Like, that's why I can conceptualize it. It's like something existing outside of reality isn't a concept that makes sense to me. I don't know how to conceptualize that.
Given what we know about space, it doesn't make sense for a human being to live between Saturn and Jupiter without any sort of spacesuit on. That would seem to be impossible, but we can conceptualize that as a thing. We can even put it into science fiction. You can do the same thing. For example, I'm not going to spoiler anything.
I don't know if
Loki
they're the same though.
Loki exists outside of space and time. We're able to conceptualize it, put it into a show, and it doesn't matter that it doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter that it couldn't work with reality. It is not in the same ballpark as saying, 'twas brillig in the slithy toes did gyre and give them away. And it's not the same as colorless green ideas sleep furiously.
So to me, that's the same as saying something exists where nothing exists.
You're confusing the conclusion you can reach based on it with whether or not there's an intelligible concept. It doesn't matter if it's impossible for me to live at the bottom, for me as a human being to live at the bottom of the ocean, we can still conceptualize me living at the bottom of the ocean.
But can you conceptualize something existing where nothing can exist? Or nothing exists.
I don't
Existing
know.
where nothing exists.
Nobody said anything about existing where nothing exists. That would be logically contradictory.
That's what I feel like I'm hearing though, when you say like outside of space and time.
How do you know nothing can exist outside of space and time? You have no way of assessing outside of space and time.
That's fair.
You're adding something to outside of space and time in order to disqualify it. But even if it were impossible for any, well, all right, if it were truly impossible for something to exist there, then saying something exists there would be logically contradictory. But even something that's logically contradictory can be sensible.
Something that's like logically contradictory can be sensible.
I can say Joe is a married bachelor. And even though those two things are logically contradictory, that construct is not devoid of meaning because we can evaluate it to determine that it is logically contradictory. You can't evaluate nonsense to determine if it's logically contradictory. You have to be able to have a concept to assess to determine.
So I'm not sure that I've ever said that I think that the concepts are all nonsense or devoid of content. Otherwise, what would we be talking about right now?
I didn't think you did either. And this is why I was specifically saying and agreeing that maybe you're using atheism in a non-standard way, that maybe there's some other term. I have an objection to the specifics of theological non-cognitivism. I don't know that I have an objection to what you think.
That's true, because you have no idea what I think. You would in so much as I can articulate it to you, and you trust that I'm telling you the truth about what I think.
What you expressed, saying, hey, every definition of God that I've ever heard has some problem with it. Well, first of all, every definition of God you've ever heard is a limited sample set, so that's potentially a problem. But I understand that and agree with it.
Well, that's only a problem because, I have no other experience from which to draw from, right? So I can only make decisions on the things that are available to me. So that sample set is all that's available to me.
Let's pull Emery back in to see if I have made things worse or
sorry.
better.
I feel bad for them.
Emery,
sorry.
Welcome back.
Get a worm.
Yeah. So, okay. I have a few thoughts. So maybe this is thinking too small, or I don't know. I get lost in the weeds of the philosophy a little bit because I don't know all the terms. Matt has said cognitive something a million times, and I'm I don't know exactly what that is, right? But for me, I'm okay, if I can pretty much, and obviously I can't say 100% sure, but can pretty much conclude that most religions, most God concepts, most philosophical random ramblings of anyone on earth have come up with are all invented by man. We came up with these ideas just because we're humans and we're, trying to figure out how the world works. We haven't figured out everything science has to offer, right? And so we're just sitting here coming up with all these concepts and ideas to try to explain things or whatever. And so since that seems like the most reasonable conclusion to me, the idea of talking about it, to me feels like what Matt was saying, where we're just kind of talking about the science fiction stuff. Sure, we can come up with the concept and it might be a real concept. But to me, I just feel like it's like we're all just talking about like fan fiction. I'm just like, what's the point of this? This is a stupid conversation. We don't have any evidence for any of this stuff. It's just pulling things out of our ass, so to speak, right? And so that's where I'm coming from. And so I'm just like, what is the like point of these beliefs and like talking about them if there's no reason behind them? And I get that like in a more realistic setting, when you're actually having a conversation with someone who does believe it, it would be relevant. But just for my own personal beliefs, I'm just like, I don't get why anyone would like buy into this or whatever, you know?
I know, and I agree, and it's fine because science fiction isn't nonsense. The fact that something isn't tied to reality, the fact that it may be fanciful, the fact that it may be impossible, that's not nonsense, not in the linguistic and philosophical sense of this, which is why I have objections to theological non-cognitivism. I don't necessarily have objections to some of the more colloquial uses of agnosticism or atheism, mainly because we can work to correct them. But if the position is the God concept is unintelligible, that's very different from saying the God concept is science fiction or religious fiction or anything like that. Because fiction I can grasp. I may not be able to grasp all of it. Hell, I can't grasp all of science, but whether or not I can grasp it is not the judge of whether or not it's cogent. But if nobody can say, here's a string of words, and this is a description of the actual concept that is presented there, then you're talking about something that's nonsense. And actually, even some of the examples I gave, like Jabberwocky,
I
it's
can
a
picture
nonsense
Jabberwocky
poem,
in my head.
and yet, despite it being a nonsense poem, it has permeated culture so much that we can visualize some things about it. And that was one of the purposes of, I think, of what Lewis Carroll was doing, in the sense of these are words that, even though you don't know what they mean, they're put together in a very in an order that feels like it's conveying information. And you could make an argument that religions are very similar to Jabberwocky in the sense that when they're putting forward an idea, they may put forward a concept that we can't grasp but feel like we do. But when it comes to just the God concept, if you think about how a lot of this probably started, I run fast, which is a lie. I don't run fast. I don't run at all, as a matter of fact. But somebody else runs faster than me. Somebody else runs faster than them. We can extrapolate to, therefore, somebody must, someone or group of people must be the fastest runners. And then there's this concept of the fastest runner possible. Nobody could, and if you take it down to where you're saying, this is an individual who can move faster than anyone else, God is the fastest mover. God is the smartest being. And when the fact that they add a bunch of extra stuff on top of it, if your definition of was God just excluded some of the things I put in there, like space-time, and just said, God is the most powerful being that exists, that concept is intelligible. It has meaning. It can be discussed. It doesn't matter whether or not it's true. And it could merely just be a definition that if we were to ever discover the most powerful person, we haven't really defined power yet, we would just say that person's God.
I don't think that has any I'm not going to hijack the call anymore. I've been mostly just mulling over what I think and how to articulate it for this entire time to try to figure out if I do or don't align with atheism. I'm still leaning like maybe I do, but I'm not articulating myself well because I'm not super philosophically minded. But I think some of it has to do with like the interaction with reality and whether or not it has valuable content, like useful, valuable content for interacting with reality, specifically as it pertains to content, to the context of God. Because you would
Maybe this is a
expect a
thought.
God to definitionally exist within reality, right?
Well,
right? As not
within
just
reality,
conceptually, but in reality.
within reality, but what is it, are things outside of our current local space-time? Is that also reality? Because we have no way of
I mean,
investigating
it could
that.
be.
Yeah. In
Sure,
that case,
it could be.
yeah, that God would exist in reality and make it anything that exists must exist in
But
reality.
does that take it out of the conceptual space, though?
No,
Like when we're
everything is in the conceptual space. There's the concept of the thing, and then there's the thing. The thing may not exist. Like there's not a unicorn
right.
in my garage, but I can
So it can't
conceive of a
solely
unicorn.
exist in the conceptual space, obviously. Like I am a concept to somebody, I'm
Correct.
sure. Like,
Existence is not
yeah.
conceptual. Yeah.
Yeah, not solely conceptual. So it would have to cross the line and both be conceptual and real. So
But
because it has
that's about
to
whether or
like
not it's
have
real.
right. Well, no,
That's
that's
not
what I'm
about
getting
whether or
at.
not
This I
it's
think we're
okay.
well, I'm getting there. One second. So I think with where my head is at, and this is me working it through. I'm not attempting to be argumentative. I'm attempting to try to formulate better thoughts. So
We're good.
Since it has to like kind of have a foot in both of those, in concept and in reality, does the defeater to it, the argument against it being that the concept of it could be, thought about, that doesn't address the reality side of it, only the conceptual side of it, and both of
The
those
reality
need to
side doesn't
be.
matter.
It does, though. I think
It doesn't. It
when it
doesn't for
comes
the
to
purposes
God.
of it doesn't for the purposes of theological non-cognitivism, because it doesn't matter whether something's science fiction. It can be intelligible. It can be meaningful, even if it's science
Right.
fiction.
I'm not
It doesn't matter
arguing
that
against
it
that.
exists in reality. Yeah. And so when we're
So what's the
determining whether or
word
not
for me?
something, I don't know, but here's what I was getting to, and maybe
Yeah.
it'll work for Emery and you. This is vindictive of me, and I don't care. I despise the very concept and discussions surrounding theological non-cognitivism because I think it is obviously stupid and false. But I think, for this very specifics of the theological non-cognitivism I'm talking about. But the way a lot of people use igtheist and agnostic, I think you guys should take that word and run with it and say, I don't give a fuck about your confused theological non-cognitivism. I just mean that the God concepts are bullshit, and run and make, because language is ours to play with. So you guys
That's
keep
funny.
using it, and then igtheism will take on another usage that will trump the 0.01% of people who ever try to use igtheism in the theological non-cognitive sense. And now we'll just say, yeah, that was an archaic usage that, Bellucci and some others tried to, push out. And
We used that before Matt and Shannon had that conversation.
Boom. It's like,
we'll talk about the
before
pre
the
this
Sunday show
conversation
and after the
ichtheism
Sunday
and
show.
the post this conversation.
Now
Ichtheism is now when I am the arbiter.
Anyway, Emery, thank you for being patient for that. Please add any extra thoughts you have before I move on to some announcements.
Yeah, I really appreciate this conversation. It was very enjoyable. I think that like what Matt kind of ended up saying was kind of where, I mean, from what I understand what Shannon was saying and what I was kind of getting at, where that probably is more where I would use that term. And like I was saying before, like all the extra philosophy stuff that I'm not totally sure what, following any of it. But I think that is usually where I would use the term. And I think I would only actually use it in conversations like this, where I'm talking to other people I know share very similar beliefs to me. And I probably wouldn't use it in argument against like a theist or anything like that. So yeah, I think that was a good summary.
Yeah, I'm still like, I use it to describe more my position, but I'm for sure an atheist. Like,
yeah,
there you go.
Same.
I would use them both. I do what I want. I make my own rules, and I'm now in charge of what atheism is. So it's been decreed.
Yes. Good.
As of today.
We may need a better word for a lot of that stuff. Emery, I appreciate the call. You've been great and incredibly patient as we sat there and talked through all that. I'm gonna let you go. I got a couple announcements to make, one more call to get to, but please have a wonderful Sunday, Emery.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, so announcements. We still got another call. By the way, if you're a theist, I've still got lines open for theists. We're probably not going to go more than another. We won't go after 5 o'clock. But if there's a theist out there, or if Massimo Pigliucci or somebody wants to call in and correct my pronunciation of his name or my thoughts on theological non-cognitivism, well, don't, because there's not really enough time for that today. But if there's a theist out there, we got lines open for you. But here's the thing. The line is growing and expanding. Not only do we have a great collection of shows for you to watch on a regular basis, the Sunday show on, of course, Sundays. Mondays is Skeptalk. This Monday will be with Erica Gutsick-Gibbon. Tuesdays, Dying Out Loud with Dave Warnock and Footless Joe. Wednesday will be the Hang Up with me and J Mike. Thursdays, Transatlantic Call-In Show will be at 4 p.m. So 32 minutes prior to now. That's the time that you want to be tuned in on Thursday for Dr. Ben and Arden. And next week on the Sunday show will be Jimmy, maybe me, probably me, possibly not me. But there's also additional shows and programs coming specifically focused on debating. Since I have decided to no longer work with modern day debates in any form, on any debate, anywhere for the remainder of time, we are finally going to be pushing through a couple of different debate-related shows here on the line with slightly different formats. We've already talked about NBoss before. You can go to the website, qnaline.com, and you can find information there about how to apply for NBoss. We're currently reviewing applications right now so that we can start booking shows on a regular basis for that. There are other shows as well that are going to be focused on debates. And it's not just going to be the same style of debates you're seeing. NBoss is going to be more like you're going to run the gauntlet where you present your ideas and you take questions from the audience and everything else. And then you build up until whoever the NBoss is. It isn't me. It isn't, well, it will be me sometimes, but whoever the NBoss is, if you're going to debate something about, is religion mental illness, maybe Shannon will be the NBoss for that particular debate and smack you down. Or if you want to go at abortion, maybe Shannon will be the NBoss for that debate as well. You want to debate trans rights issues, maybe one of the hosts of TACIS will be the NBoss for that. But we're doing a variety of shows like that. And this is something we've been planning for a long time. It's just, there's a handful of us here. Also, we're working on LineCon for next year in April during a total solar eclipse that you can view here from Austin. Be more information about that coming up as well. Also, if you look down in the show notes underneath here, it shows you how to support us on Patreon, how to become a channel member, other supports via PayPal or Cash App or Amazon wishlist or whatever else. But down there's another one that isn't a link, but it's an email address, and that is contact@qnaline.com. We are looking for additional people who are interested in being moderators, call screeners. If you are interested, or if you previously applied and did not get a response, please send an email to contact@qnaline.com. Include how we can contact you, what experience you have in there, what name we may know you by in chat or whatever. If you've been a long time supporter here, that'll be a lot different from someone we don't know. And in addition to all of the shows, there is a special event tonight at 6 p.m. So in about an hour and a half, a little less than an hour and a half, Forrest Valkai will be available taking on a Zoom call exclusively for patrons of the line. So if you haven't signed up, you can go over to patreon.com/calltheline and become a supporter there. I don't run that, so I can't promise that this will let you get into tonight's Q&A, but if you do it, it'll let you get into the next one that we do as one of the bonuses there. So tonight it's going to be Forrest doing a Q&A, and please remember, this guy's getting ready to do his dissertation, and you should just ask him all the funnest questions to take his mind off all the rest of it, and then he'll get back to cramming afterwards. I don't think I have other announcements, but I do have 2 calls. So, Are we ready to shelve atheism for a while longer? I mean, by all means, keep stealing the label and make it mean whatever you want. You're also muted, I think. Yeah, I don't hear you at all. I can't hear Shannon. I'm not sure if Shannon can
That's
hear
because
me.
it's because I muted myself. That's not Aron's fault. That's my fault. That's because I muted myself. I can't make any promises, but I could do my best. I'm still not done thinking it through. I still think we should have a broader conversation at some point. It doesn't even need to be on air. I just want to talk about it. I want to talk through.
I got 23 broader conversations I've been looking to have with you. We need to dig in some more on some MCU stuff. There's still an episode of The Hang Up that I want to do where I sent you a specific topic, and I know that it's no longer as timely as it was, but I want to get back on and talk more about the brain stuff and how it relates to belief, not just with regard to like doxastic volunteerism, but the psychology of how things appeal to people, and how one thing that baffles me is how you could be having a conversation with someone about cooking their favorite dish, and every question you ask them will get a slight thinking pause followed by the best explanation or the best answer to that question that they can come up with. Like, should I use, Miracle Whip or mayonnaise? Be like, oh, well, in this one you could potentially use either, or in this one you definitely want to use mayonnaise because this, and because Miracle Whip is gross, or whatever the thing is. You get those kinds of answers, and yet you can, in the middle of that conversation, switch to, and I'm not suggesting that it's just about throwing somebody off, but switch to, the other day we were talking about God and you started telling me why you believed in God. What's your best reason for believing in God? And the type of answer you'll get and the inability to stay on topic just floors me. It is, if you go back to the call that we did with Abdul, and it's like, okay, why do you believe that Islam is true? And if you parse out the sentence that he finally got to before he got to the faith answer, I typed it up. I don't have it here right in front of me because I've already gotten rid of the notes for that call. But he gave an answer that if you were to parse that out, it said, I believe it because I believe what has been passed down. It was a lot more words, but it was, and it's, I think there's something about thinking you've said more than you have by saying, well, the information that's been passed down, which I find reliable, is of such a nature that it leads me to think that this is most likely true. That's a long way to say, I believe what I've been told. And yet you don't find it phrased that way.
That's because we don't think our beliefs are formed based on emotions and traditions, though. We think that our beliefs are formed based on like logic and probabilities. That's what we think. That's not really the case, though.
And that's so
we're on it. So there's a dissonance between how you articulate it and the reality of it.
We are
because your own experience of why you believe things is an unreliable narrator.
Yes, we lie to ourselves all day, every day, even when we're trying to do our best to tell each other or tell ourselves the truth. It's
yes.
It's really strange. We got 2 calls to get to. I appreciate everybody's patience and waiting. Hayden in Ohio, pronouns are he, him. You are on the Sunday show with Shannon and Matt. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you two?
Pretty good. How can we help?
Great. Questioning everything I know about reality.
So I'm an atheist. I live with a Christian who, has huge faith in it. And I know, Matt, you were a Christian who lived with an atheist, and every conversation that we have, God somehow is brought into the conversation. And I don't know how to respectfully talk to him, letting him know that, it's just make believe, like it's whatever he believes. And I was looking for some ideas from you guys. How do I have a healthy conversation with him when God is literally the center of everything? Good math, blah, 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 all that stuff.
What kind of conversation are you trying to have? What's the goal that you can't achieve?
It could be anything. It could be any conversation. We could be talking about cards. We could talk about playing pool or drive. hanging out with our kids, anything. It just always leads back to God in some weird way. And I don't know how to combat that. Like, how do we just have a normal conversation? Is there a question that I can ask when he
Yeah, but
brings up God
I'm
every
asking
single
what your
time?
goal is.
Oh, my goal is for him to critically think about his beliefs and to question himself. My goal, I
And you're
mean,
going to have to talk about God. That's your goal.
Sorry, Shannon, what you say?
If your goal is to get him to question his beliefs, then you're going to have to talk to him about his beliefs. So God's just going to organically be in that conversation.
Right, right. And I've done this for like over 2 years. And I think I'm at that point where it's like, I don't think anything I've said or has gotten through to him at all, and because I've read the Bible with him and I've questioned the Bible with him to make him like, oh, this doesn't sound right. Does this really mean what this means? And I'll bring up videos. We'll watch videos, and sometimes I try to bring Matt's videos up. His debates that he's had with people, and he won't watch them. I don't know how to get through to him.
Well, I
Where
mean, like,
we
bro,
can just
though,
have a
like,
normal
if
conversation.
I was him, I'd be bringing God up all the time too, because it sounds like you're like, "Who watch this thing about how God doesn't exist? Think about how God doesn't exist." Like, you've been kind of setting the tone
Yeah,
between the
but
two of you
it's not
as
just God, right? It's witches. It's half giants, half human, half angels, because the Bible says the angels bred with humans, and now they're out there, and it's just all Leviathan in the water. All the book of Enoch is real to him. So it's not just what's in the Bible. It's all these different aspects of, I think, fictional history, basically, or story.
So
And
you've attempted to instill in him the ability to think critically and skeptically about these claims, and it hasn't worked.
Correct.
Well, first of all, it's not your job to fix everybody. Second of all, not everybody's fixable, not necessarily by you. And if you've tried to point him to stuff and he's not listening, not having an interest, you need to stop.
Okay. And how do I do that respectfully? Just ignore the conversation, because we live together. We've been
which
living together
boundary
for a
set.
while.
Boundary set. Like, you would just say to him something along the lines of, "Hey, like, I value our relationship together. I can sense that there's some friction between us when we have conversation about like beliefs and supernatural claims. Can we agree that going forward that our conversations are restricted to concepts outside of that realm? And
Okay.
maybe if we bring it up, like if it comes up organically, then we can kind of take a beat with each other and say, hey, remember how we agreed that we weren't going to have this conversation because it might have an impact on our relationship? Let's use this opportunity to be centered in the moment and make the conscious decision together to both move on without having a conversation about this and go do something we enjoy doing together." And then you retain the relationship, you learn to respect each other's boundaries, and you don't talk about it anymore.
If there's a
Okay.
TV show, that you actively despise, for example, I despise the Ghost Hunters shows, won't watch them. If I lived with someone who constantly kept bringing up the Ghost Hunter shows in all sorts of areas, including places where they had zero relevance to the conversation, I would say, look, I've talked with you about this. I've tried talking to you about this. I've pointed things out. I pointed out that I don't like it. I pointed out that I don't agree with it. I've tried all this other stuff. I'm exhausted. Every time you bring up the Ghost Hunter show, I'm going to stop that conversation and go on and do something else. I don't want this to be a barrier between us. I've done everything I can think of, but now we've reached a point where you are constantly coming at me with something that I don't want to talk about. Could you imagine what your life would be like if every time you wanted to do something or have a conversation, I just said, ghosts aren't real, Jesus is bullshit. Ghosts aren't real, Jesus is bullshit. Ghosts aren't real,
Right.
Jesus is bullshit. Wouldn't that annoy the crap out of you? Try to get them to realize that while they're talking about this stuff, it may just be, and this is an unfortunate thing to say, maybe you guys will have to find different living arrangements and stop being friends. Because one thing for me is that I want friends that I respect and that respect me. We don't have to agree. We don't have to agree on everything. there's a lot of things we don't have to agree at all. Matter of fact, that spices things up, and I get to have arguments and good discussions that allow me to think. Shannon and I don't agree on everything, but I have more respect for Shannon than I'm ever going to admit on a fucking show in front of people. But it's it is partly because
keep me in check.
In the areas where Shannon and I might disagree, the way we have discussions between the two of us, and by the way, you've seen some of it on the show, but this has happened in private too. Shannon's been I went to Shannon when my life was falling apart, basically for free therapy and just a friend to tell me, yeah, you're the bad guy, or no, you're not, or whatever else. The way those arguments happen are productive. They're valuable. I learn something, even though she's wrong all the time. Hopefully she learns something every now and then. It's just the way it goes. And if Shannon and if either of us were the type of friend that couldn't have those type of disagreements, we wouldn't be friends. And unfortunately, there are people who are not my friends anymore.
Yeah, it's getting to that point. I mean, I brought up that whole something similar to you said. I said, what if every time we had a conversation, I said, well, my pet dragon, because that's kind of like what you do with God. Well, God says this. You know what I mean? Well, what if my pet dragon tells me this every single time we have this conversation? You can't see him, you can't talk to him, but I do, and he tells me. That's kind of similar. And so I can't have a conversation with you because it's what you believe to be true, even though we have no evidence for anything like that. And I'm just looking for some evidence on those things. I mean, I do like debating, but it's been going on for about 2 years, and it's like it's a dead horse that's been beaten over and over.
Don't shit where you eat, though, bud. I don't know if that's a maritime term, but yeah, don't shit where you eat. If you like debating, true, like in your home's not the place to really enact that vibe.
I mean,
yeah,
I've had lengthy disagreements with, for example, my mom. We had like a 6-hour argument or something like that when I came back to visit for Christmas in like 2016. We don't do that anymore. And it became clear we're not going to make headway on this particular subject. So now we have to make a decision, and we have to make this decision together, because the agreement needs to be, you and I need to compromise about what we are and aren't going to discuss for the sake of this relationship because we value it, or you and I don't get to have discussions for the sake of this relationship because we value it, or we no longer value this relationship. Those are the options.
Yep. Okay, I definitely agree. I did the same thing with my mother. It's funny you say that, but that was like 3 years ago. And I agree. Okay, well, that answered my question.
Thanks, Hayden.
Thank you very much, you guys. You have a great day.
You too.
I hope it works out with your roommate. And
yeah, me too.
Now, somebody in chat did the thing that I hate.
Relationship.
They said agree to disagree, and I despise that phrase. It's like really near the top of the list. I will agree that we do disagree, but agree to disagree gets tossed around as if there's no right answer, and that just ain't true quite often. All right.
You're so meticulously pedantic.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
But to be fair, I'm like this a lot of the time. I'm always like this on the show because that's my job. I'm in debate mode on the show. I'm also in debate mode off the show quite a lot, but I think Arden can at least vouch for my ability on some occasions to slip out of debate mode and just have a little bit of fun every now and then.
Once in a great while.
Yeah. Thanks for the support. I love you too. We got the last caller coming up here, but when it's over, I've solved the atheism problem.
Oh, please.
So that's the teaser.
We're having speed run.
It's now 10 minutes to 5. I'm going to take this last call, and then I'm going to present my solution to the atheism problem. And by
Rock
the
my
way,
world.
I'm standing by my previous solution of keep using the word in the way you do, because it'll be better than the way it's supposed to be, or
Okay.
originally used, not as supposed to be.
Mhm.
Aiden in Connecticut, pronouns are he, him, is an atheist and has a question that he doesn't know how to answer when being asked by his religious family or members. So welcome, Aiden. Maybe one of us can give you some type of answer or not.
I hope so. I'm Matt. Yeah, I've mainly through watching you on ACA and this show, Matt, it's forced me to kind of pull away from the beliefs that were handed down to me from my religious family members, and we don't talk often about it. When I visit for the holidays, it comes up, and because of you and others, I feel confident, expressing my atheist beliefs, or I guess lack of a belief. But the one point we usually get to that I kind of get stumped on, and I usually just answer with I don't know, is okay, if this is illegitimate, if the God of the Bible is illegitimate, there's no evidence for it, you don't believe it. What was this? What is the purpose of this? What was the point of this? What was prophesied for over 400 years, and then this guy that was walking around on Earth, what was he doing? What was the motivation behind this? And I guess it could be a broader question, for all religions that are ever put forth, but specifically they're Christians. What were all these people doing? What was all of this for then, if it was nefarious? And I usually answer, I don't know. But I wasn't sure how to answer it. I don't know if there's a better answer. Yeah, that's basically my question. I get stumped on it, and I'm not really sure what to say to them.
Well,
I think it was.
I need you to be a little bit more specific when you're like, what was the purpose of all this? What were these people doing? Because it depends on what you're asking about. Because there's a great many things when you say, what was the purpose of this? And my answer is, how do you know that happened at all?
That's a great point. They talk specifically about Jesus himself, the disciple, the people, not necessarily the people who are putting this Bible together, the people today, the pastors and priests and the followers. But if I were to concede that Jesus at least walked the earth, or some of these core people that we generally believe at least walked the earth, why is this all been drummed up? What is this? What do you think this is? If it's not God, writing this book through man, God sending his son down, what is all of this? Why would they go through all this trouble? Why would they do all of this? I understand, Matt. They is very, very vague, but I hope that kind of answers it. I don't know.
Vague. Here's the reality. A bunch of people told stories which may or may not be true. And those stories, if they're true, are pretty important, pretty significant. And if they're not true, the fact that you don't have some explanation for them isn't really relevant. Until they can demonstrate that what they're asking about is something real. It's like saying, why were the pyramids built? Well, we have a pretty good understanding potentially of some of the reasons why the pyramids were built. But if we didn't know at all, if we had no clue why the pyramids were built, that doesn't make their explanation correct.
A bit of an argument from ignorance, I guess. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's very much a difficult, it's like, oh, why did all these people say these things? Okay, say which things? You can't demonstrate that any of them said any of the things that people are trying to say they said. You can't demonstrate that they did any of the things that people are trying to claim they did. It's just, okay, prove it. Because so far, we got a big nothing.
That makes sense. So questioning, why they believe it in the first place kind of invalidates, their question to begin with. I guess why do I need to give you another explanation for why this all may or may not have happened? Prove to me that it's happened, and then we can talk about it. That makes a lot of sense. I guess I was kind of tripped up on, if Jesus, did walk the earth, he was a person, let's say, but he wasn't divine. What would he? Why would they have been doing this? What is the point of all of that? But I guess I was kind of putting the cart before the horse. I guess I don't really need an answer. They still need to prove that all that's that actually happened before we could talk about why. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Yeah, the other thing is, what's wrong with I don't know as an answer?
Yeah, that is the answer I would normally give, and I just wasn't sure if I don't know. I kind of just defaulted to that, and obviously they didn't like it. Big surprise, but you're right.
Yeah,
I guess there's nothing
I'd
wrong with it.
really, I would be tailoring my answer to the specifics of the situation. And if somebody says, hey, if Christianity is not true, if the core of Christianity isn't true, that Jesus isn't God and, died and was resurrected, then why does the story exist? Well, the story exists because somebody told it, and people tell stories sometimes to teach moral lessons, sometimes to back up what they think happened, sometimes because a 3-year-old says, Daddy, why is the sky blue? And you don't have a clue, so you make some shit up. That sort of thing happens. So you need to go through and look at it. But I think I would turn it around on them for most of this, which is, okay, let's assume this is true. And you have a strong, epistemologically sound, evidentiary warrant for believing this, which means basically, let's put that in. Let's say it's all true and you have good reason to believe it. Why is God hiding?
Mm-hmm.
Why does the world look exactly like it would look if there wasn't a God? Why are people starving and reaching out to God for help and hearing nothing in return? Why are there 1,000 denominations of Christianity that disagree on every single point of doctrine, including right down to whether or not Jesus was a real person, whether he was fully man, whether he was fully God, whether he was both fully man and fully God? You can't get agreement on any of this. Where is your God to correct all of the confusion and the misinformation? And what's the purpose of all of this in the first place? Because if God created everybody knowing exactly who would end up in heaven and who would end up in hell, why wouldn't God just create all of those people in those locations? He can even create them with memories of a life lived here on earth without making them go through all of this and having all of the confusion. If God knows that I'm going to die in my sin as an atheist and go to hell, send me there right fucking now, you coward. You should have sent me there from before you created anything. The fact that all of this makes zero sense, and the best evidence that your family can come up with is, well, if it's not true, what was the purpose? Demonstrates it ain't fucking true.
I couldn't agree more. I do question sometimes if it is worth having these conversations, and I think it kind of parallels with the other, I guess his name was Aiden too, the previous caller, where it's, you got to draw a line at some point. It hasn't really hurt our relationship too much. And my mom remarks sometimes that she's sad that I'm not going to be in heaven with her. That's unfortunate, but we're still friendly. There's no issues there. So yeah, I don't know if at some point I should just politely say I don't want to talk about it anymore. They normally bring it up, but I agree. That's great advice. I should turn it back on them.
You get to set your boundaries. It's one of the things that I told kids too, when they're like, my parents keep making me go to church, and I'm like, go and take lots of notes and use those notes to ask lots of questions, because I'm going to bet at some point they stop making you go.
So I sometimes wish I could go back to Sunday school, knowing what I know now, because I'm a dick. And I feel like it would be so much fun to just be in my little 6-year-old body, raising my hand, annoying people.
When LineCon happens, if we're able to get Shannon down here, Sunday morning, we're going to church. I'll pick out a mega church in the area, and we will go as a group of godless heathens. But Aiden, I got to let you go. I appreciate the call, and hopefully that helped.
It definitely did. Thank you for the advice. Both of you have a great evening.
Thanks so much. Look, we're going to wrap the show up here because it is 5 p.m. And I think there may be... Sure. You know how when we talk about atheism, generally we just say atheism, but sometimes we have to get more specific and talk about the difference between weak atheism and strong atheism, where weak atheism is simply, I am not convinced that God exists, and strong atheism is, I'm convinced gods don't exist. I think we could have weak atheism and strong atheism, where strong atheism is the one that applies to theological non-cognitivism, saying the God concept is devoid of cognitive meaning. And weak atheism is saying the God concept isn't sufficiently developed for me to take seriously. And that could be the weak atheism and solve the whole thing.
I think that's close. I think that we're getting closer to maybe aligning with what my actual position is. Not that I suppose it even needs a friggin' label, but we like labeling stuff though. But I think that's
great,
so
'cause
much closer to my actual position.
The closer we can get you to actually being correct, it's going to make everything so much easier.
God, the fucking condescension for me. Is the show over?
I fell back so hard, I almost tipped my whole chair over. Hey, everybody. That's our show. Thank you guys so much for calling in. I know we didn't get quite as many theistic callers today as we'd often like to. If you are disappointed by the number of theistic callers, you not only need to consider how you are supporting the line and network, and I'm glad you guys are here in chat, but how you can reach out to say, hey, are you a believer? There are people you can call to justify this and to get views and an audience. If you're a believer out there and you are in particular a Christian who thinks that God has given you the Great Commission to go ye therefore under all the nations, this reaches all the nations, or at least a good chunk of them. It reaches more nations than you're going to reach sitting in your living room, flipping through channels. We'll see you all next time. Thanks everybody for your support and your continued attention, watching us have fun having these discussions. Maybe someday, maybe next week, somebody will prove a God. Not today.
I might even be right. I'll be closer anyway.
Shannon might be right next week.
I might be. Probably
I might
not.
never be right. I'm used to it.
Actively attempting to be wrong at this point, just out of spite. I'm gonna pull an Ayan Hirsi Ali live on air. Next time I host, I'm gonna be like, you know what I love? Jesus.